Welcome, everybody. Hat Tuesday, number 3, Wednesday edition. Thanks for joining me, guys. It feels like every time I go on and I go live these days, I don't know. It feels like it's been a while, right? I think we were live last time on Friday, and I don't know. Um, Hey, Josh, how's it going? Good morning, my friend. Josh, that hat you're working on looks fantastic, by the way. I am really excited to see how that turns out. I believe you mentioned it was for the hat you were working on for your client. So I'm hoping they're really happy with it because it looks really good. I think you mentioned that they didn't want the brim binding. Let's see. Oh, 1 second here. Paul, how's it going, my friend?
Hello. All right, thank you. And you?
I'm doing well. I can hear you loud and clear, and we got Josh in the audience as well.
Hi, Josh. Oh, let's put the hat on a bit better.
Yeah. Josh, I was just asking Josh about the hat that he's working on for his customer. Yeah. He I think what I understood from your post, Josh, is that your customer initially requested some brim binding, like I like to refer, me and Paul refer to as brim trim, and then decided they didn't want the brim trim. Hey, Ian, saludos. My faithful moderator, or at least one of them, Ian joining us. I appreciate you guys all being on. Yeah, so Josh says yes, that's what happens. I don't know how often that happens. I got to imagine that obviously in working with Paul, there was a shift, right? So for you guys that are in my my inner circle, you guys kind of saw that in real time in that I was on a walk. I went and I just had an epiphany. And I said, okay, Paul, I know we just had a discussion. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. I was like, I had this discussion with Paul, really great discussion. I thought everything was finalized when we were going to go with the silver belly for the second hat he's working on with me. And then I just like, what, Paul, you know what? I never really asked you, and that was my thinking. I'm like, I'm having a conversation with Paul not being there. And I'm like, I never asked Paul, like, what kind of ribbons, what his inventory is like. Let me do that before I make a decision, or at least a final decision, right? And then Paul kindly, showed me what's in his inventory, and then made a recommendation. And I don't know, Paul, if that's something that you knew beforehand, or if it happened organically.
Hey, organically. I mean, to be perfectly frank, I have 2 boxes full of ribbons, and obviously they change as needs must. But and then I match and play around with the different color combinations.
Yeah.
And are you all right for me to show what we did, or do you want to?
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, this is what we ended up with. It's the hat with which is now like an ivory color. It's a sort of silvery ivory color. It's a lovely color, actually. It's quite a neutral color. I bought it to go on a silver belly hat, and I'm just really pleased with it. And then we did this little note on it, which actually I really quite love. Actually, I think it looks really cool.
Agreed.
I mean, I thought, well, it was there for a reason, but actually, just it looks, if you wear this with the down in it, just adds to the character. Put a couple more things on it, and you've got it really going on,
Yeah, Paul, that looks gorgeous. That looks even better than I had it imagined in my head.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's nice to know, because you never, as a hatter, you never know, because you're working with hats every day. Thanks, Ian. And I mean, Josh will know this, that we get very critical of our work, and of course we forget that customers are seeing perhaps our work for the first time, and so they don't really know what our standards are. And to be fair, we don't. I mean, this is the Hufford that I was talking about that turned up today.
Gorgeous.
And thank you. And I've had a Hufford before, but never had one that fitted me. And this is a 60.5, which is nice. But it's very interesting when I look at this hat and actually take it to bits, if you like. The felt is Hufford by the felts from the same place as I do, FEPSA. At least that's what I've read and I've been told. But what they've done here is their block height is about half a inch higher than my blocks. So when you pump that out, it's a fairly flat top, if you like, on the, can you see the profile there? It's fairly flat.
Yeah.
So what we've got is this is a roundish profile, as you can see, which a lot of my blocks are. And then I've got, you know, these, whoop, fell on the floor, these flat topped blocks.
Yeah.
So now, and what I do is I build a step to go at the bottom here, which plugs in to actually give me more height. And so the Hufford hat is one of the highest height hats that, that I've seen. You know, so and I think probably the Hornscough hats are the same. They're 6.5 inch. Mine are sort of 6 inch crown. They're 6.5. So that was something I learned today. But you know, other than that, they use a 50 mil grain, which, you know, we've got 50 mil gross grains and things. Their ribbon is only a single ribbon, whereas I go double on the bow. But you know, apart from that, you know, it's a lovely hat, and it's something that that I will you know, take and model the design, because it's a very sort of 1940s design hat. And the brim trim is nice. They've got like a 20 millimeter brim trim, and I still have to work out how they do it, because they actually have a very, very fine stitch very close to the edge there, and it's perfectly close to the edge on the other side. Now that is either a very skillful thing that I think it's Mikhail, that I can't remember, but that they do by hand on the machine, but shall I say? But it's just beautifully done. It just is lovely done. And of course, inside they've got lovely. You can see that they're the leather sweatband in there, which is all customized and everything. So it's good. What's this? I made a mistake on cutting my sweatband due to the customer constantly changing, and they want to wear the hat, so I have to make an adjustable gap.
This is the hat can now stretch a bit due to how I have the sweatband. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one about the sweatband and about the size of it. And you know, some people cut the sweatband to the hat when they stretch the hat. Others, like myself, I cut it to the customer's head size, and then, if necessary, I stretch the hat a bit more. So if somebody was wearing a 60.25 centimeter shaped hat, then I'd cut the sweatband to that, get it sewn up. I'd make the hat and stretch it to 60 centimeters, and then I've got a stretching device that will actually not the handheld, but the big one that will stretch the whole crown of the hat that quarter of a size, to then make sure that the sweatband goes in without these kinks that you sometimes see in a hat. So it's a bit of a to do, but obviously it's the right thing to do.
Paul, I mean, first of all, that's a cracking hat. You know, it's just really, it just commands, right? It just commands attention. And the neat thing, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but you picked this up used.
Yeah, I picked it up used. I'll be open with you, because I think I'm going to keep this one. I think I paid £60 for it, and it's it's 50 beaver, 50 rabbit, which I think they're £333 or something new. So I mean, it has been used, but the sweatband is in good condition. I've cleaned it all up, I've steamed it, and what have you. And interestingly enough, on this one, where it had been worn, I actually pounced it as well, the felt bits with sandpaper, and brought it all back. But I'm extremely pleased with it. It's a lovely neutral color, and you know, every now and again, as a hatter, you pick something up that's nice. But I put this one in the background today, which is a very close one to this that I made, and this is 100% beaver, but it's only the 38 mil gros grain. So I'm going to get a 50 mil gros grain and change it, because I think the 50 mil looks really nice, but I think that extra half inch on the top here is probably going to be a better balance between the 50 mil and the crown of the hat. So it's all these sort of things that you pick up when you're going along, when you're looking at other people's work and you're looking at the designs. I mean, this is still a favorite hat of mine, but you know, having put this one on today, it's a really nice hat. So you've got a Nick Fouquet in the background there, which again is nice, but it's a lower crown, and obviously it's a straw in that felt. But it's just nice seeing these different nuances between the different manufacturers and having the ability to have a collection and wear what you want when. Yeah, great bargain. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I mean, Paul is, like I said, I mean, for those folks that have not heard Paul describe his journey, his hat journey in particular, you know, Paul started off as kind of like where I am now in terms of concentrating on the vintage market. And he's not, I'm sure that Paul is not, you know, eschew the vintage market. He's probably, you know, if he finds the right one, he'll go after it. But Paul is still having, he still has that idea of, I can really get a lot of bang for my buck or my, you know, my pound by going used and then using some of the skills that you've acquired in restoration and now hat making to make something an even bigger bargain.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that we can recycle. I mean, it gives me so much pleasure buying a hat that that perhaps is too small by today's standards, taking it to pieces, but in fact it might be a beaver felt or something. I mean, you know, there are some bargains out there. And the other thing is that, and I've said it before, there are a lot of people that perhaps have to dispose of their relatives' hats because they've unfortunately passed away or they've gone into a rest home or something, and they don't know what they've got. And it's not that you're taking advantage of them, because what I tend to do is I had even one time, I remember I said to the person that I paid them the money for the hat and then I sent them some more money because, you know, it was just too cheap for the hat. But, you know, that's, I don't know whether that's right or not, but for me, it just seemed the right thing to do. But there are lots of good secondhand hats out there. So keep your camp in both, keep your thoughts in both camps, you know. Some people wouldn't want to put a second-hand hat on their head. Well, if you've got a steamer, the ability to take out the liner and give it a wash, give the hat a real good steam and a going over, then honestly, it gets rid of any of the sort of body odor smells and things that are in there. So it's well worth considering.
Manufacturers do interesting. Borsalino hat I had the brown stitch that was not connected to anything. It looked like it was for structure to keep the hat from stretching. Interesting. Interesting, Josh. Yeah, you guys have already like expanded, you know, and again, I just want to make sure I go on and on about this, but I don't mean to blow smoke like we say here in the US, but you guys have given me a new hat appreciation just from the knowledge that you guys have shared in terms of what goes into the manufacture of these hats. And obviously the restoration, you know. So now I feel like if I'm going to get into like the next stage of my hat journey, it's probably going to follow something along the lines of what Paul has gone through in terms of I'm going to try my hand at restoring a hat. And I'm going to try to do it very stepwise, kind of like Paul. I feel like we're very kindred spirits in that way, in that we are admirers of the stepwise approach to this hobby and to a lot of things. And by what I mean by that is you start off kind of like with your car. If you have a problem with your car and you don't know what's the problem and you want to throw parts at it, do it in a stepwise approach. You start off with the cheapest fix and then see if that does the job, and then keep escalating to the more expensive fixes, you know, unless you have better information, you know.
I think one of the very first things that if you're going to go down a route of restoration is actually to get one of these basic hat blocks with a stand, so that it comes off. And I'll tell you for why. The first thing that I do when I get a hat to restore it is to find the appropriate size block, and usually it's a couple of sizes smaller, and then put the hat on the block and take all of the structure, so you put it back to an open crown. By doing that and having it on the block, you can then use your brush to really push against the block and get a lot of the dirt out, and then use I use this this tape. This is like a Gorilla tape, okay? And I break that off, and then I put that on here to take off all of the embedded dust, dirt, and what have you. So once you've done those two things, then clean the leather inside, decide on whether you're going to take out the liner, and then introduce steam to when you start introducing the steam will get under the felt's fibers and start to lift the fibers, and you'll be amazed. You'll see the color start changing in front of you. Now,
Yeah.
by doing that, it also starts to remember the memory that it's got in the shape that it originally had at the factory, and so it will make it a lot easier for you to understand and you know, put the shape back in the hat. What was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. What you so Paul? So most of my hats, and I want to say all my hats, but I'm gonna qualify
Yeah.
that. Most of my hats are between 57 centimeters and 62 centimeters.
Yeah.
So what size block would you recommend based on that
Well,
range?
your actual head size is what, 58, isn't it? So
Yeah, 57, 58. Yeah.
yeah, I would buy at least one that's your actual size, and
Got it.
then do you know what? It's usually a lot easier and sometimes cheaper to get a small one. So something like a 55, 56, or 22 inch, something like
Yeah.
that. And I'll tell you for why. It's because that's used for a lot of women's hats. Okay. And there's more women's hats made these days. So get something like a small one that's actually your size, and then I wouldn't bother getting a bigger one unless you really have lots of bigger hats, because
Right.
your size of 57, 58, you could still put the bigger ones on and push out the shape of the hat and
Yeah.
and use it enough to get to your thing, your brush against it. The other tip I've got is that, and this is one that Josh might use himself, I don't know, is when you've got a block that isn't big enough, or if you need to block something, you know, maybe a 58 and a quarter, then use an old felt and put the felt over the block, cut the felt round, and then block the new felt over the top of that, because that gives you an extra quarter to a half of a size, because you've effectively got two felts on there. You see what I mean?
Yeah, Paul, that you just blew my mind there, because I still just can't get over that right there. Like, you probably shortcutted my process, you know, and saved me some money, because that makes perfect sense. You start off with something that's widely available, that's a little cheaper and can get me started.
Yeah.
And then once I see the benefit of that, then I'll be more inclined to upgrade, because I know the value of it.
Yeah, and I mean, what I first started with like the kettle in the kitchen, but don't tell my wife, all right? And because you know, it was comments like, "What's this in the coffee tonight?" And of course, it was some hair fibers, but don't go there, all right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I quickly moved on to one of these sort of desktop clothes steamers, and the clothes steamer is perhaps in the UK they're about 60 or 70 pounds, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that is a great one, because it freestands on the side. You can get the steam constantly coming out, and then that's absolutely ideal. If you just remained an enthusiastic hat collector with 50 or 60 hats in your collection, having one of those is sufficient.
Yeah.
You know, it's not until you start getting into the real sort of making of hats and so on, unless of course you've got the means to do it, that you go on to get the, I mean, I've got a Jiffy steamer, and I've got an iron steamer, and I've got the steam bath behind me, but you know, my favorite is probably the iron steamer, because it's more effective to get it in where I want it to get to. But yeah, I mean, that's the sort of way that I would look at it. But
yeah, luckily I have a cat that I could blame. You know, that's one of the utilities of having a pet. Like, now, obviously, so there'll be things like, why is there you know, laundry on the floor? It's like, obviously that's the cat.
Yeah.
I'm like, sorry, Oliver, you're getting blamed for everything. And obviously we know that, you know, he's not there. He can't speak to defend himself. So
yeah,
only
cool.
imagine.
Yeah, but just be aware, once you start, you won't be able to stop.
Yeah. And again, that's why I love the stepwise approach, because at least, it starts snowballing, and then it becomes kind of like a escalation of commitment. It would be the term that you use, meaning that your significant other will see the value and how much joy it brings. And then that is usually enough, right? Because remember, love is what's bringing you guys together, and then what keeps then you start really realizing why you chose who you chose to partner with to begin with.
I think for me it was being creative. That, you know, if you can imagine that all my life I was working with a computer, and you know, using my mind and not being using my hands or anything. And then all of a sudden, I had this epiphany, which was, you know, I wasn't really, there was nothing that I left behind.
Yeah.
You know, there was nothing. And I, you know, the day that I stopped work, probably the following day, I'd be forgotten by the people that I worked with all my life, you know?
Yeah.
And so you know, I went through the journey, as I said to you, about my health scare and things. And then the idea of having a YouTube channel where you can actually put something up and it's there for people to see was lovely, even if it was only, you know, 10 people. Thankfully, it's hundreds of people now. But and then having created these hats that at some point or another in the future, it's like me looking at this one from Hufford. Okay,
Yeah.
I have deep respect, as you know, for Hufford and Hornscough and Nick Fouquet and Lock and Co and so on. And you know, I'll never be in their league, but just having a bit of a tip to, you know, towards them and acknowledging what they're doing and creating a few hats and being a level below is what I aspire to, and lovely. And just getting them and looking at them and then learning and then implementing it is lovely, because, you know, this hat, I don't know how long ago it was made because there's no label in it, but you know, at least the guys that created it probably hoped that it will go from you know, either be in a family or it will go on, it'll still be giving people pleasure, and this will probably go on for 50-60 years or more, you know.
Well, Paul, I cannot let you be so humble and not come up with a counterpoint, right? So as per usual, one thing, and again, no offense to Hornscough and to Hufford, I love their hats, but you know, right now, I'll speak for myself. Luke does not own a Hornscough or a Hufford yet. Doesn't mean I won't, but right now I'm working with Paul. I will own at least a couple examples by Paul, and I feel like that's got to be a feather in the cap, that, you know what, and it also solidifies the fact that, you know, there's room for everybody in this space.
Yeah,
so
there is. Yeah, I think that's the nice thing, is that you know, the market space is big, and for me, it's a case of ensuring that those people that are hatters don't have a small-minded approach in terms of keeping the business to themselves. You know, let's open up and share. You know, and I've said that on numerous occasions, but
absolutely. And then great comment by Josh here, and he works in IT and he can't publish. So this, you can already see like the commonality here between two hatters. And then Paul said the same thing. He has fun doing this. It's relaxing. It's I'm sure a stress reliever, maybe after a long day of meetings. You know, it's something where, again, everybody needs their outlet. You know, some people, it's working on cars. I have a gentleman that lives right next door. Is a very young fellow, and he's constantly working on his car, even though technically our HOA doesn't really allow it. But I'm not gonna say anything, because I love it. I admire the fact that he's doing something. I have no idea. Like I've never asked him if he's actually a formal mechanic. But he works on his car constantly. Sometimes a friend will come over and they work on his car. I love it, because I'm like, that guy could be doing something that's not so great, you know, and who knows what, right? I'm a big believer in, if you don't really do what you love, if you really shy away from it and ignore it, the universe suffers in some way, right? Meaning that you probably don't want to see a Paul or a Josh that's not hatting. Meaning he'll probably be a little bit less nicer, a little bit more shorter, just a little bit, just enough for people to notice. And the good thing is, like, you have access to, why not do it, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. Ian says, cats call us can openers.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Philadelphia, a great novel. Again, Ian, you are a wealth of all things movies and all things books. Now you just enticed me to look that up. But I am a very new cat dad, relatively speaking, right? So I kind of grew up having cats, but they were usually stray cats that we fed, and sometimes they stuck around. Oliver the cat, it actually is a former feral, and he's just a great personality, right? So I think that's one of the things in my cat journey, right? We talk about my hat journey, but my cat journey, it really is with Oliver, and Oliver is he's just a cat that even non-cat people could appreciate, and that's how I describe him, you know. So shout out to Oliver. He's napping right now. You know, he likes to get in what I like to call, he likes to get in a tight 22 every day. So yeah, but yeah, cats, you know, these are the things. Surround yourself with the things that bring you joy, right? Not that you want to be materialistic. That's not what the message here is. But if it's something where, right, we talk a lot about the hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow, another fellow guy from Brooklyn, psychologist, and he has that pyramid. Again, regardless of how you feel about it, it does make intuitive sense that once you take care of your lower order needs like food, love, whatever else that you need, then you can make way for the things that you want, right? And then you get higher onto that pyramid till you start getting into what's called self-actualization, right? You reach kind of like nirvana, right? And maybe I'm exaggerating a little here. Maybe Maslow wouldn't say it's nirvana, but it's kind of like you fulfilled your potential. And then you try to stay there, right? You try never to go down, right? Sometimes things happen, right? Paul has run and still runs many businesses. At some point in time, maybe those businesses will vary in their performance, and he might need to make some sacrifices. But at the same time, Paul's already gotten higher. That would be that much more motivation for him to reach back up and get to the top of that pyramid. And I think this beautiful thing, right? Sorry, I'm getting a little soapboxy. I get a little preachy sometimes, but I think that's part of what you sign up for when you view my channel is that Luke will, you know, I call it I go dad. You know, these are things that if my son were in front of me, I'd talk to him about, and he would like roll his eyes and tell me like, you know, the things that kids do with their dads because they think that they're out of touch and all their extra years of life experience, you know, add no value. You know, now my son doesn't go that far. He doesn't go that far, but I do know, like I've seen his progression, right? Since he was a teenager, he's now in his mid-20s. He's also a YouTuber. You know, he's actually a way more successful YouTuber than I am. He's part of the reason why it inspired me to get on YouTube. But it's beautiful watching his YouTube journey and now his life journey. And you know, he's got a serious girlfriend. He's doing well in his career. But I always never hesitate to dole out advice, not because I want to tell him what to do. It's because kind of like the way I look to Paul and I look to folks like Josh and all you guys that watch the channel in terms of how do you guys shortcut my journey to get to where I want to go? I like to try to do that for my son and anybody else, not just my son, my nephews, my friends, anybody else where I could assist. Again, not to tell them what to do, but to say, hey, this is some benefit I've acquired in my close to 50 years here on this earth. And if you value that, I'm going to offer it for free. That's just how I am. I've always had an old soul. I probably was a kid that, and I mentioned this before when I would describe like the way I would observe my dad, right? So obviously when you have a father figure, those of us that are lucky enough to have a father figure growing up that they could model themselves after. Not that you did everything that your dad did, because I certainly don't. My dad is a multifaceted man. So there are things that I chose not to do because of my dad, but it's still learning nonetheless, right? But the main thing is obviously a love of watches, a love of fragrances. That's something that you guys are not gonna probably see a lot of here, but I'm not opposed to it. You know, I am kind of like a junior fragrance buff. Not that I have many, right? I probably have like 2 fragrances right now, but there's something that goes with your outfit. It goes with you know, a fine hat. Is smelling a certain way to kind of give off that, like I said, this is how I want to communicate to my external environment. And fragrances are part of that, you know. Maybe a lack of fragrance is your part, you know, but it's still, right? It's still interwoven. The senses. I'm
just admiring your hat today, actually. I think you've already said to us what it is in the group, but but it's really looking really nice on you, actually.
Thank you.
Really, it's a nice change, but I'll let you go into what it is. But I just want to know how nice it looks.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. This hat has been a long time coming. This is an Akubra Stylemaster. Akubra has always been a brand, and Paul, we had a brief conversation about this on a previous live stream, but Akubra has always been a hat that's eluded me. And again, not because I've never had an opportunity to buy one. I've just never had an opportunity to buy one at a price that that worked for me, right? That's always been the at least the kind of like the with the holder or the linchpin. I don't know what the word would be, but you guys know what I mean. And my good friend Jeff, the same gentleman that I bought the case, the hat case that I profiled here. He posted a Stylemaster with the brim trim. It was a gray one, and I felt so like wow. So I messaged him and I told him, I said, you know what, that's a great hat. Like I'm looking for one like that. And he said, Luke, I can't sell you this one, but I have one coming in. No promises. I'll reach out if it makes sense. Sure enough, I think a few days later he reaches out and shows me this picture of this navy blue hat. And I just and then he gave me an offer that I couldn't refuse in Marlon Brando terms. And I spent the whole week waiting. Like essentially I wouldn't be opening my door because I didn't get a tracking number, so I didn't know when it was going to show up. It could have been a day, right? I don't know how he shipped the hat. But I was constantly and it became a running joke in the household. They're like, you're checking the door again, aren't you? And sure enough, yesterday, while I was in the conference, I get a text message saying, hey, looks like this hat arrived today. I'm not going to open it. I'll wait for you to come home. And sure enough, I got home yesterday, very, very tired after a very long day. I enjoyed myself at my conference. And this hat, when I opened it, like my energy levels, I almost went live that night, but I refrained because I knew I needed some rest. But yeah, Ian, yeah. And when I did the research this morning, right? So you kind of know my process. When I acquire a hat, I kind of want to know about the provenance. That's something that we discuss at least in kind of surface level in this discussion right now. Paul talked about he alluded to the fact that every hat has a story, right? And I know I've alluded to that, and we like to refer to that as the provenance, right, of the hat. And it really is like when you buy a hat that belonged to, let's say, a former family member, maybe it was somebody else's family member. I've had that happen, and it adds a little extra something to the hat. I don't know if it does the same for you guys, but for me, when I know a little bit of something about how old the hat is, who might have worn it, maybe what profession they were in, right? We talked about the hat. This hat right here, this hat is the hat with the jump wings, right? I don't know who owned this hat, but I do know that they were an airborne school, or at least it made it seem like they were an airborne school. That automatically, right? Besides the brim trim on this hat, it made this hat a lot cooler for me. And to the point where it's like, well, this one will be harder for me to let go, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way collecting and collections work, at least for me.
I mean, the Akubra hat, from what I understand, was started as a hat for the equivalent of the Cowboys in America. It was for the ranch boys over in Australia. And when you feel it's a rabbit fur felt, and when you feel it, it's quite a substantial one. But they have different levels. Again, it's qualities and things. And I've had a couple of the Stylmasters, and they are a really nice hat for a dress hat, because most of their hats are called ranch hats. So they've probably had as many as I think over 100 different designs of ranch hats. And in fact, Ian refers to a straw hat there, and yes, they make some pretty good, solid straw hats. I would love to get hold of one. They're really very, very good. Whereas people like Lock & Co have very delicate straw hats, and they're beautiful. Don't get me wrong; they're proper Panama Ecuadorian straw hats, but they don't wear very well, And Akubra is a real sort of, it's a belt and braces. It's a pair of denim jeans on your hat, on your head. It's a solid hat, and of course they do open crown hats as well now at Akubra, which are lovely to form into the different shapes. But you'll find that will be a real go-to hat, because they really do stand the weather. So yes, I mean, again, I don't know if I shared this at any point in my discussion, like in terms of like previewing, but yesterday
and today are very rainy days. So right now I did not take my walk yet. So this morning I saw the weather, and even though I know I had the Akubra now, because I just got the hat, I have not been tempted to go test it out. But I feel like, remember I talk about the knockaround hat? I feel like this has that perfect blend of that knockaround hat, that hat that can take a little bit more abuse, right? Not that you want to be abusive to your hat, but you also like, there's a certain liberation that comes from knowing that you can go out regardless of the weather and not worry as much about the fact that you're abusing the hat. And I feel Akubra is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Panama hats. And again, Josh, this is where, again, and Paul, I guess I never really asked you about your, besides your Nick Fouquet, in terms of straw hats. I've always seen the felts, and you may be like me, in that you like the Panama hat, you like the straw hat, but you kind of have a preference for felt.
Well, I have a preference for felt, but I'll just knit, and I'll show you one that I have made. Won't be a second. Yeah. Just bear with me a moment. Where is it?
Ah, okay, interesting.
I have this sort of straw hat that I've made
That's
before.
Beautiful.
And it's I like it. I mean, I have to say that in the summertime I'll wear a felt that's perhaps a very lightweight, 80 or 90 grams, and it's still a little bit nippy in the air here in the UK. But I did make this one for this year, and it's I quite like it. It's slightly wider brim to keep the sun off, but it's just a bit different. Sorry about the glare from the light.
No, it looks good. It looks good. I love that color contrast, and that I got to tell you, Paul, that hat doesn't even look like, if you didn't tell me, I might have not noticed that it was a straw hat.
Oh right, okay, yeah. It's I think I've come across with I think I like the profile that I've achieved with it, and with a big, it has got a big brim, which it was really because keeping the sun off. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
And I put a lining in it, but of course my linings come out very simply. So what's nice is that if it's a bit chilly of an evening, you can pop the lining in, but in the daytime take it out, and of course the straw will breathe and allow you to breathe easier. So that's one of my efforts on straw hats, but I don't make many of them because our climate is not such, but looking at Nick's and mine, I think
that's just gorgeous. The Nick Fouquet hat is just like, nobody would like those two hats. Nobody, regardless of how you feel about straw hats, could say too much negative about those hats. I mean, maybe I'll just speak for myself. Somebody else will be like, on the contrary, Luke. But again, I'm talking as a guy that really doesn't, like I said, I have that cheap blue straw hat, and I've never really been inclined to own one, and not because, I mean, not any other reason than like the felt has really kind of been like where I've been drawn. Yeah. But you guys already seen it. I'm not a flat cap person. I now have 3 flat caps.
And here's one that I bought many years ago, where my sort of journey started with it. But it was this is much for you.
That's my style right there. Yeah.
I mean, I'm very used to wearing the big brims now, but it's a little stingy brim, and it doesn't really keep the sun off your ears, but it does off your head, I guess. But yeah.
Paul, that's amazing. Like I said, I saw that hat there. I guess I never noticed it, that it was a straw hat. Again, I don't know if that's good or bad. For me, I consider it, a nice thing when a hat doesn't even look like a straw. It just looks like a great fedora,
Yeah, I think you're right. And few people have said how different and nice it is, but it's I wanted a straw hat to look like the design that I like in a felt hat, but just a slightly bigger brim, and I think I've achieved it. And it's if I keep it, I keep it, but it's doing a job.
Yeah, and it looks like Ian's already got plans.
Hey, it's not this Friday, it's the following Friday. Ian and I are going on a bender in London around the hat shops.
All right, excellent. Let's see. Let's go. We're gonna go with achievement, right? So again, part of the beautiful part of this, right? So I'll mention this again, and not trying to toot my own horn, but I believe Paul and Ian never knew each other prior to this channel. So this goes to show you the power of social media. They're not that far away from each other, and now Ian is a customer of Paul's. Besides being a customer, I believe they're like I'm gonna make an assumption like friends. And this is the beautiful part about this hobby, right? We all know that everybody wants to kind of find their tribe. I always refer to it as finding your tribe. And you kind of want validation, like when you want to go, because we know how little hat folks, right, that you truly meet on a day-to-day basis out in non-internet life, right? So that's part of the allure of going onto social media and coming onto a platform like this one, where now you get to go and interact with your own people, your hat people, your fellow hat nerds, and you're all welcome here. That's the thing. Regardless, you're welcome here. And Josh says the straw cowboy hat marketing is very predatory. The X's are alike. Yeah, we kind of know, like, so marketing speak is a thing that exists. I mean, products like hats are no different. I believe, I want to say Resistol and Stetson do that, but I could be wrong. Hopefully I didn't like throw them under the bus prematurely, without any merit, but I believe they're ones that do that. And, it's one of those things, obviously, caveat emptor, right? Buyer beware. Hats are products just like cars are. Everybody knows, right? I have a Corolla that says LE, and I believe the LE stands for limited edition. And if you know anything about Corolla, there's nothing limited about any Corolla. It's limited to how many they could sell, right? It's an old marketing thing. It's a reason for them to get you to buy the electronic windows and to spring maybe for air conditioning that they don't have standard on the car. Corollas are like that. You can get up until recently, I believe, you can get a Corolla with the roll-up window. It's like you didn't want to buy it, you want to do this, you could do that with a Corolla. And so this limited edition is really a crock of bull. It's malarkey, as they say. But yeah, excitement builds. Exactly. Again, they're trying to make you, right. They know they once they got that captive audience, they're trying to do the ABCs, right? The ABCs of sales, always be closing. So and there's nothing wrong with sales. There's nothing wrong with making money. And hopefully that X didn't really somebody doesn't feel bad about the fact, hey, that X thing made me buy this hat, and now I notice what a crock of bull. I'm gonna write them a strongly worded letter or something. I don't think they've ever gotten that, but maybe they have. I don't like deception, but I let salespeople do sales things. Yes, they do, and they glue their bound brims. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. See, this is where folks like Paul and Josh really, really enhance this channel, because as somebody that doesn't restore these hats, I have no idea. And now I just learned something. Again, you guys already made the stream, so Yeah. Any other hat news? And if not, that's okay. What I'll do is I'll go into the slideshow, because right, you've seen this hat on my head, and if you guys have seen this format before, what I'll do is I'll show you some photos. If everybody wants to humor me, I'll go into some of the history of Akubra via ChatGPT. And again, I always make that disclaimer. ChatGPT is something that I use, and I will tell you when I use it. That way, caveat emptor, right? Whatever Luke says that that repeats from ChatGPT may or may not be accurate. You got to do your own homework. So that there is a 30K hat out there. Oh boy, a 30K hat. Now, again, does that mean 30X or 30K as in the dollar figure, Josh? I'm going to ask for clarification on that.
I must admit, I've seen 100X out there and so on.
Yes.
And on this side of the pond, so to speak, it's confusing for us. And I tend to stick when telling people about the felt makeup to the percentages. And so FEPSA will, on all hats, felts, let me know what the percentage of beaver or rabbit or whatever it might be is. And I only deal in beaver and rabbit really, and a mixture of the two. So I don't get into the X numbers, but when I'm buying second-hand hats, it's quite challenging because you can only see the pictures, and of course you can see the labels and things, but you can't feel it. And a lot of about felts is the way it feels, and the way it feels could be. I mean, I've pounced a rabbit felt of a reasonable weight for an hour and a half, and you'd be very difficult to very challenging to feel the difference between a beaver felt and a rabbit felt. It's only then in the performance of the water repellentness of it, if you like, and the difference. Blimey, $30,000 hat. Beaver and mink.
Now again, I have no basis. Paul, you and Josh probably have a little bit more about like what the potential markup would be on a 30K hat made from beaver and mink, diamonds and 24 karat gold. Now that might even be beyond a typical hatter's knowledge. What in the watch world, when diamonds are put on a Rolex, there's a term for it. I forget the busted out. I believe that's called busting out a Rolex. And a lot of it actually reduces the value sometimes, right? Because now you've taken this Rolex this essentially this perfect machine from Rolex, and now you've put it in the hands of somebody else that may not have the craftsmanship of Rolex. And now you took that potentially really valuable Rolex and you may have reduced the value of it. It's just unfortunate, but I know there's not a lot of fans. I'm a big fan of doing what you want with your stuff, but if the idea is to resell it to somebody else, you got to be very careful about what you do.
I think for me, there's a sort of limit in the midway. But you're talking about your markups and your profit margins. I mean, I was a buying director and buying controller in a big retailer here in the UK for many years, and what you'd expect in fashion and clothing. If it was like myself, it would be whatever your cost of your materials, and you might multiply it by 2.5 to 3 times. If it's a high street store like Lock & Co, are probably and Herbert Johnson, they will be marking up by 5 times, 4 to 5 times. Because I know, as a matter of fact, for instance, that some of the brown, I've got a hat here that I made, which is the sort of Raiders type hat, and that's the same felt as Herbert Johnson buys, but they charge between $495 and I think $795 for their hat. So and mine's £175. So you sort of think, well, okay, they've got shops, they've got overhead, they've got staff, they've got this, they've got that. So it's and when you get that, multiply that into your £30,000 hat, that's probably been built by a company that has got workers, has got premises, and it probably has because of all the advertising and the fact that they're only going to sell one of those a year, if that. Then it's an interesting dynamic, really, of why they do it.
And obviously we know that brands, so for certain products, right? Paul already mentioned that as far as he's aware of, he uses a felt that's similar. I believe you mentioned both Hornscov and Huffbud, Paul.
I mean, my understanding from what I've read out in the world, I'm only reporting on what other people have said and what I've seen on FEPSA's YouTube, that they state who some of their customers are, and certainly they're on there. So so at one point or another, they've bought from FEPSA. And of course, why wouldn't you? It's probably the best manufacturer, in my opinion, of felt in the world. But then I haven't used too many American felt providers because they're over there and I'm over here. So I'm not being perhaps fair to them, but certainly FEPSA is known as being a very, very good felt supplier.
And then it looks like Josh added that the name of it is called the 1878. I'm going to take a look at that because, again, that's the beautiful part. There's no cost to click on the link.
No,
just a little time, And so basically the idea is there's a cost to make a product, and obviously there's going to be a markup for the time of the crafter, right? So we all know that maybe Paul has a different number than maybe Mikhail does, and maybe the Hornscove gentleman. He probably has a different number, and obviously there could be a branding thing, right? The value that they place on the brand, all these things go into effect, right? And also what the market can support. These are all factors that go into the final product pricing. And the thing about it is, right, we talked about Optimo in Chicago, and these things exist, and it's good to have choice. So Josh says, I would love to get felt from FEPSA, but I can't do the prices and the tariffs. Understood. So
is that what you get? See, in the UK, when I import felts from FEPSA, hi Morgan, I have to pay the VAT, which is understandable, but there doesn't seem to be any duty. It's some small percentage points, but that's all. Do I understand then that there's a pretty big markup now by the government to import from Portugal?
Yeah. Ian, like I said, the beautiful part is that there's so many choices out there, regardless, like within your price range. And again, and then if you want to add in the vintage market, the vintage market does allow you to, if you're willing to play the game, you are able to get yourself into a much. I mean, Paul's. If you need any kind of reason, look at the Huff Bud that Paul has on his head right now. Like, do you need any other? Right? Paul said he paid £60 for that, and it's a gorgeous hat. Now Paul did some work on it, but this is part of like the elbow grease, right? That's the term that they typically use, at least here in the U.S. You put a little elbow grease or sweat equity, if you want to use real estate terms. You put a little sweat equity in it, and now you got something that is more valuable. And if you want to resell it and rehome it, like I like the term, somebody will probably pay you more than what you paid for it. And you could make 2-3 times the amount on that. Again, I'm not telling you to go out there and become a hat reseller, but from my experience and Paul's experience, it is something that you could make a little bit of coin, and it could be fun. That's the main thing. You could have fun with it. So we got Morgan joining us, and wanted to add this here. If you get the chance to look up the Cowboy Cartel, they did a video on a master cowboy hat maker, Chaz Mitchell. I'm not familiar with him, but I will look him up. He does not have his price. I'm assuming listed, but his deposit is $450 and only works with beaver. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you want to, if you consider and you fashion yourself more of an artist, right? Who's to say what you need to work with? Again, the customers that want something else, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe he'll give you a referral. I only do beaver. If you want something else, I will give you a referral to somebody else, maybe to somebody like Paul or Josh. And that's what you're hoping for, right? If you can't service a client, like for me in the corporate world, one of the things that really made an impression on me was with my employer would go and a client would come in, a potential client would say, hey, I need to do this job. Can you do it? And my employer would go, you know what? We might be able to do that, but you're much better off with going with this firm. And a lot of times we never got compensated for it. It was a professional courtesy that we extended to somebody else in the industry that we could vouch for their work. And what happened was, the beautiful part is that the universe would reward that. Sometimes that other firm would come back to us maybe a few years later. They'll say, you know what, I remember that one time when you did that thing for us, that was great. And you didn't have to do that. And they would go and maybe have us subcontract with them or something else where maybe they'll reciprocate. They'll say, there was a piece of work that came our way. We know that you're more of an expert in that area, so we referred you. And again, we have a mutually beneficial relationship now. It's beautiful. Yeah. Sorry, again, I get on my soapbox, but what I'll do is I'll actually show some of the hats. So for those folks that came here to see Akubra Stylemaster, I'll show some of the pictures, and then obviously, Paul, you're a lot more familiar with the brand. You can intervene with what you might think about the this particular one. Now, the way I understood this is the navy blue model that I have is a slightly more rare model for Akubra. Not that it's ultra rare. I'm not trying to like make this more than what it is, but my understanding is that this navy blue color in Akubra, the Akubra Stylemaster is a little bit more rare, only because you know Akubra's reputation. It's a little bit more rugged. Navy blue is not one of those colors that you associate with ruggedness. It's more elegant, right? So you guys already know that I'm going to, try to bring this up, but it may or may not work. But just give me a second. Hopefully this will take less time now. What I'll do is I will do the dance, the famous dance of the sharing of the screen, and then we'll see. I feel like I had I figured out, I cracked the code. But again, every time I think that happens, I want to say it's StreamYard. But yeah, whatever it is, the universe decides, hold on, Luke, you don't really know as much as you think you know. I feel like that is a thing, a commonality, a recurring theme for my life, to be honest. But it's okay. Like I said, there's an old adage that say, I never lose. I either win or I learn. And there's value in having that kind of perspective, right? I mean, you want to have a learning orientation because that makes things much more fun in life. Maybe while I'm fuddling with this, Paul comes up with some kind of like, brilliance distractor and like he did before last time. He like drew the conversation. Eventually, it took me a bunch of tries, but I got it. Paul, that's no pressure. You don't need to do that. Trust me.
Well, I hoped I had an Akubra here, but
oh, nice.
I'll tell you what I do have. I have and I'm sorry to change the subject because I don't have it. I usually have an Akubra kicking around, but this is a hat from a company called Cygnus. Now, Cygnus is a company that makes hats for I think for Farthing. What's the name of the company? Thomas Farthing we have in the UK that actually is a Farthing, which is a company that they actually sell 1940s clothes and suits and that sort of thing, and they get Cygnus to make a whole range of hats for them. But this is not one that I particularly like, but it's a woolen hat, and it's one that they make, and it's a sort of denim type of hat, and but it's one that I've not got around to selling because
it's gorgeous.
It's not the sort of standard that it's not in the standard condition that I'd like to sell it, because it's, if of all things, it would appear to have a plastic sweatband, and it's like, I don't really want to sell a hat with a plastic sweatband because that's
understood.
More, so it's, I suppose it highlights the fact that people that make woolen hats, they tend to make them to a price, and therefore the materials aren't as undersized as perhaps ones that are made for higher quality felt. And you get that sort of compromise, and but this is a maker that I hadn't seen before, so I thought I'd have a look at it. And I guess it's not something that's mainstream here in the UK, so I don't know whether it's at all in America.
I've heard of it. I've heard of Cygnus. I believe there was a hat for sale, a vintage hat for sale. I don't even know if it was vintage. It could have not been vintage, but remember, I purchased quite a few hats from Kevin Gerber, and Kevin had a Cygnus hat for sale. It was a felt hat. It wasn't my look at the time. Maybe this time around, like if that had come across to me now, I might have been more inclined to purchase it, right? So after I purchased this Carmen Sandiego hat, this hat, now I'm a little bit different, right? I'm a little bit more amenable to that style. And by style I mean a little bit like the longer brim, and also having a hat that flips down. Like this hat, I immediately put it, like I tried it on with my usual brim up. Didn't look right. At least I didn't feel like it looked right. Once I flipped it down, oh man, like it has like a natural hat tilt to it.
It does. It looks pretty good on you. You ought to wear more of that shape, really, and maybe even just a slightly wider brim would really look good.
Yeah. You know what? This is, I believe it's a 2.5-inch brim, which I think is the standard for the Stylemaster at least. I believe that Akubra makes another style called the Fedora, and I believe that is 2 3/8 inch brim. But don't quote me on that. I might be misremembering, but I believe that's correct. And then here we go. Josh said the Charlie one horse hat I restored had a plastic sweatband. When I took it off the hat, it disintegrated. Interesting. Oh, yeah, you know, this is a conversation that I wanted to have with Brian Forbes. You know, if you guys have seen the photos, he doesn't have leather sweatbands. And again, there might be a really good reason for why, right? It could be cost. It could be, you know, whatever reason, Brian, but I don't want to speak for him. I want to get him back. So Brian, you know, you're welcome to come back. I will wear the hat or one of your hats. You know, the thing about the, you know, the reaction, right? So I fashioned Brian to be a lot more artistic, right? And I don't know if he used those terms, but the way Brian carries himself is very much as an artist. And I guess that's why I respect him so much, is that when I don't have the number, I don't have the data to support this, but I feel like in terms of artists out there, hat makers, hat as art, I feel like the numbers are even smaller than the general community. You know what I mean? Like it's even smaller about folks that would say, I'm an artist. I'm not a hat maker. I'm an artist. I think regardless, if I had to guess what Brian would say, first he's an artist, then a hat maker. At least that's how I view him. But again, I want to ask him that, you know? I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but you've seen that. Like, I know that is a turnoff for a lot of folks. But for me, when I see that, I'm like, okay, Brian intended it to be that way. Now I want to find out what was his thing. And it could be, hey, Luke, that wasn't art. That was cost, you know? And that's cool. I'm fine with that. But his
use of color is really lovely, isn't it? I mean, he comes up with some really good color combinations, and I think you're right that art is very, very important to him.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, I struggle, being, you know, the mindset that I'm in. I struggle with bright colored hats. So I've only recently gone over to this color or the color there, and to the reds and the greens and things that I make now. But you know, it's a long way away from what we're taught here in the UK as being acceptable. And what Brian's doing is really, you know, muddying the waters, because I look at it, I think, wow, you know, that's fantastic. It's great. I'd love to do that. And then I think, well, actually, what would I wear with that? You know, the granddad trousers. I don't know. You know, it's
and like I said, there are various proclivities or comfort levels with what we like to call rocking the boat, right? We know that people exist within environments, right? People exist within their neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods exist within your greater city. That city exists within your greater province or state, what have you, and then within the nation, within your continent, you know, yada yada yada. And you can't help but be like, you kind of have to like push and pull with your greater environment. And sometimes you don't realize that you are in a certain environment until you leave your environment, right? Kind of like a fish. A fish that probably doesn't know it's wet until it leaves the water, right? So I love that analogy, but I feel like once we do traveling and once we start interacting, like that's what I get when I interact with you fine folks. I've never been in the UK, but now I feel like I have a flavor just for you guys being here on my show. And I get benefits from it. And it makes me want to do the actual traveling, you know? Now I want to go to the UK even more. And I don't know, maybe I'll feel compelled to be in line, right? Maybe I'll bring a more conservative looking hat. Maybe I'll bring the Hamburg that's going to be on its way at some point. You know, that seems like it would be fitting. But maybe if I see the reaction to the Hamburg, my next trip to the UK, I'll be a little bit more bold, you know? But for me, I like to be respectful. Like, I don't want to go to the UK wearing this hat, you know? I don't know. Again, you know, Ian and Paul are like, well, you're going to be fine. And I feel like I'll be fine, right?
Oh, you'll be fine in Central London, if you know what I mean.
But I feel like people are going to look at me and maybe I won't get the reception that I'll get maybe as opposed to wearing something a little bit more conservative, you know? And I want to be well received, and I want to like say, hey, I respect you guys. I'm not trying to throw my my ability to wear a loud hat in your face, you know? I don't know. Again, that's just me. I like to approach things that way because I like to, again, not that I expect the same thing, but I do subscribe or whatever the word would be to the old adage, treat others the way you would like to be treated. So I'm somebody that, I don't know, I think it's in my upbringing with my dad that we kind of carried ourselves with, we want to be respected. You know, you don't need to kiss our behinds, but please don't be disrespectful. And I can't help, like I said, I was brought up that way. And I've talked about like the farming culture. Farmers have that face like this. I'm a smiling gentleman, but my dad and his dad, who you've seen photos, they didn't smile because they were folks that were more agrarian. You know, they were farming people, and farming is hard work. And you don't do this all the time when you're doing farming work. It's just something that comes with, you know. And I'm sure there's more to that story, right? In terms of having a Spanish background, that comes with that, like that Spanish dignity. I don't know. You guys know, if you guys traveled and you know about like the, you know, obviously there's stereotypes. We don't want to like over stereotype folks and over generalize, but certain these things, there's a little truth in them, right? And there is that kind of that Spanish influence that carries over into the countries that were colonized. So anyway, I won't go too much into that because I'm not an expert. But Ian says no hat of mine ever attracted the attention that the new green one does. There you go. Like I said, and Ian has that personality. Like, knowing what I know of Ian, everybody could benefit from going and stopping Ian in the street or in a pub or anywhere Ian happens to be and having a conversation with Ian. Ian is one of those gentlemen that you could learn a lot from. So if you see Ian, you know, and on the street, I recommend talking to him because, you know, I benefit from having him here. And I'm sure you guys over in his neck of the woods could benefit. You know, Paul's going to benefit from Ian very soon. So I love it. Nothing is too outreach for London. Yeah, London is obviously the city. Again, having never been in London, for me, I feel like I get New York vibes from a place like London, right? And if you know about New York, you know that there's going to be all kinds. And that's kind of what you sign up for when you go to the city. And maybe as you leave London and get out into the outskirts, I'm generalizing here. You guys stop me if I'm wrong. But for me, I'm like, London might be one way. And then as you might go just a few miles outside of London and get a very different feel. But yeah. And you know what? My slideshow is working now. So I will put that up. So thank you guys for keeping the audience kind of entertained here. But I will go and I will put up the slideshow. And again, we don't need to spend too much time, but I just want to make sure because I don't know. I'm assuming that people do like. I think I had an interaction with Paul. Paul said I do like to kind of see the photos. Because again, I already realized on my head, and you guys don't want to see my hair, trust me. There's a benefit to having a hat on, and I don't want to ruin it by taking it off. So I will show these photos. These are not my photos. These are photos that Jeff, the gentleman that sold me the hat, snapped for me, and I think they were really flattering photos, to be honest. So what I'll do is I'll go a little bit more. You guys let me know if you guys want me to zoom in a little bit more. But I'll do that. Let's see if this helps anything. I might be making it worse. You guys let me know. I might be too much. Let's go one click back. All right, so this might be okay. And there you go. You can kind of see this was a very flattering photo. So these are the photos that Jeff sent to me and said, "Are you interested?" And I was like, heck yes. You know, I'm like, that is gorgeous. You know, you can see the blue on blue, and you can see a very thin ribbon. Again, I believe, without knowing the brand, I believe this is kind of one of their signature ribbon styles, the thin ribbon. And you guys know I'm a fan of thick ribbon, but I feel like this thin ribbon really works well on this hat. And you can see that blue. That blue is really powerful. You know, I got a blue hat coming from Paul. You guys probably seen that on a previous stream. And it has the orange brim trim. You know, I just think it looks great. There's something about blue and the navy blue that goes well with a lot of different outfits, right? We've talked about if you're somebody that wears a suit to the office, navy blue, if you had one suit that you want to own, the general wisdom is go after a navy blue suit, because it really does have that kind of that do-it-all type of appeal. And if you guys are shopping for a suit and you want to buy two suits, usually the conventional wisdom is a navy blue suit and maybe a charcoal suit, right? Without going black, because there's divisiveness in the propriety of a black suit. I'm not somebody, right? You don't wear a hat like this and worry about propriety. But for those folks that want to be conservative, right? We talked about the folks out in the UK with Paul and Ian mentioning that there is a little bit more of a conservative aesthetic. Then navy blue in a charcoal suit may be what you want. But again, those are rules, right? You learn the rules and then you strategically break the rules. I learned that from the Matrix. So, shout out to the Matrix. But yeah, just a very flattering, for me, a flattering profile here. I will go with the front view here. You can see this photo made the front brim look a little longer than it probably actually is. It's only, I believe, a 2.5-inch brim. But again, there was no angle that turned me off about this hat. This is what, again, we talk about the hooks, right? Ian, thank you. It is in good condition. And the nice thing is it has that reputation of being rugged, right? This is a very stylish hat that also is rugged. And that was the appeal, right? That was the appeal for the brand, and in particular, the Stylemaster. So let's see. Let me make sure that. And this is kind of another profile view. This one looks a little darker in the blue, but I thought it was no less flattering. This could just be lighting. But lighting counts, right? So you guys know your felt will look different under different types of lighting. So for me, who knows if Jeff meant it this way, but it's like a happy accident, right? That he actually had different lighting angle, and I can see how the hat reacts, right, to the certain levels of lighting. Josh said it's a nice hat. That pull down on the brim makes it look longer. Yes, yeah. And again, we all know that this is part of the angle, the effects of angles, right? That's something that I have less knowledge on, but I do recognize the importance of visual angles. Hats, just like a lot of things, have many angles to them. Somebody that has that eye for angles, right? A photographer, maybe, somebody that does videography, they will probably know how to take advantage of angles and lighting to create the look that they want to create. And that's the art and the science behind, the image, right? Ian says, taking hat photos is not as easy as it looks. Trust me, I do know this. You see all these photos, and then, you can start appreciating, even if you're not an expert, you can start appreciating. I think Paul happens to take really great photos. That's something I never mentioned to Paul, but now I thought to mention it because of what you mentioned, Ian, on Paul's website. And again, I don't know how Paul feels about it. I hope he likes his own photos, but I'm going to be somebody that provides some of that feedback. Again, I don't have a trained eye, but I've seen enough hat photos. I'm like, okay, that hat looks good, and I believe that's all we're really looking for, right? How do I make sure, I have this hat in front of me. How do I make this hat look as good as I can make it in front of you guys, right? And you always see that comment from those folks that take photos. Sorry, guys, this hat looks better than the photos appear. I have a cheap phone. I have a cheap camera. It's always that thing. And you kind of know, because everybody knows that, one, your equipment is going to provide a sort of cap on what you can do. And then obviously your own body of knowledge and your ability to show and take advantage of that equipment is also going to vary. But that's the beauty of it, right? There's no one right way to do it. Two different photographers can take a hat and have completely different visions of what they want to do with that hat. And well, it is what it is, right? Let's see. I'll keep going here. I won't this is just a top photo. You can see this one also came out a little bit lighter. I'm a big fan of the top photo because you want to see the crown. So that you can see it's kind of like a teardrop shaped crown. Now, Akubras, from my understanding, Akubras are a brand that they will usually try to come in preset on preformed. Paul mentioned that Akubra started offering the open crown option. I like that because just like preferences, some people like their hat shape for them. Other people like an open crown. Now, again, for me, my personal stance is I like an open crown only if I can do a dry bash, right? So if it's a Borsalino that has a very, very a felt that is very pliable and it's easy to dry bash without steaming, then I prefer open crown then. Otherwise, I prefer something pre-shaped and done for me, as long as I know, right? As long as it arrives in the shape that I saw the photos in, right? Nobody likes to get surprised. Surprise! You saw this hat, you wanted it, but now it's a completely different shape, and you're now going to have to do something to change it. It's not terrible, but I mean, I prefer not. Like, I feel like I got the rug pull out for me when that happens, you know? It's kind of like, it's probably better than receiving a hat in an envelope, like I mentioned before. You know, that's one of the ultimate, like, why? Why you do that? What else? Let's see. Again, some of the inside of the hat. Again, I don't know, like the sweatband looks completely nice. You can see that it's been worn before, like maybe some of the wrinkling here, but not a lot. Like, I don't see a lot of staining. This is exactly how the hat came to me in. And it just looks like it really wasn't worn. You can see it's a 57, which is like, this is about as small as I can get, right? I'm technically between a 57 and a 58, you know, but for some reason, this one fit just like my Borsalino, which is also a 57. It happened to fit. It's a little snug, but I can still, because of the brim, I can still get a nice hat tilt look for it, and I don't need to size it up. So it actually worked out well. Me and Jeff just happened to be the same size head. That's another tip. Besides collaborating with your fellow hat nerds just to share knowledge, if you happen to be the same head size, well, now you could switch hats, right? Let's say you have a hat that you don't wear a whole lot, and your buddy thinks like, wow, that's a great hat, you know? And you know you guys are the same hat size. Well, and he has a hat that he doesn't like, that you guys could swap, right? You never know, right? You can see how it lives, right? That's a term that I like to use with a lot of things, but with hats is no different. You can just see how it lives, right? You buy a hat sometimes, and you're like maybe like with Paul when he bought the Cygnus, he's like, oh, I'm going to take a chance. Paul bought it. He saw how it lived. He then found out that it had a plastic sweatband. And well, now Paul's like, well, I don't mind rehoming this, but now the only problem is, how do I rehome this knowing that it has a plastic sweatband? Well, Paul, I mean, you know, for me, I'm a big believer, as in full disclosure, as long as you disclose, hey, it happens to have a plastic sweatband, and then whatever details you can provide, as long as the person on the other end is not getting surprised, I feel like you're justified in rehoming that hat. But, you know, I mean, everybody's got to do what they're comfortable with, you know? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I already had that comment. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I just rehashing comments here. Sorry, guys. I'll just keep going with the slides. Again, anything spectacular, but this is kind of, these are the shots. Jeff took the shots. Maybe he did that because he happens to take shots like I do, but the scheme that he used in terms of showing the details is exactly what I do. And maybe that's a Fedora Lounge thing. Who knows? Maybe that was something that once you're in the Fedora Lounge enough times, you start learning to take photos this way because everybody else expects it. So, you know, fine logo. I mean, the roundel, I don't really have much to say other than, you know, it's a classy looking roundel logo, so to speak. Sorry, I may be using the term roundel. I always use the term roundel for logo, but maybe roundel is actually just the lining, right? I don't know. So one of you guys that knows better can tell me. That way I don't propagate ignorance here. But yeah, you can see the Stylemaster. It says fine fur felt. And I like this shot because it also is a very up close shot of the felt, right? You can see right here at the bottom, you can see some of that felt, that blue. And that also helped me make the decision to say, yes, I'm buying this hat from you, Jeff. Get it here. And what else? The final shot here. This is just the made in Australia. Again, we can go into a little bit more about what I found out about Akubra from ChatGPT. I did learn, and that's again part of the beautiful part of being exposed to new brands. For me, my process, you guys already know it by now, because you've seen it ad nauseum. Once I get a new brand, I automatically start going and doing my research, and usually that involves ChatGPT. So you know, before I get into the ChatGPT portion, I want to make sure I'm not like dominating and you know, and talking over you know, and being too long-winded, because I know I am. Anything you guys want to opine before we get to the ChatGPT? Somebody made a comment here. Let's see, Josh, Paul, what do you say? What do you say at what grit that felt is pounced to? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean the looking at the Akubras, they're quite a rugged felt to start off with, and that's a dress hat as opposed to a ranch hat, which is what I call the other hats. So I would imagine that they've gone from like an 800 up to a 1200, and maybe I wouldn't have thought much. I wouldn't have thought much less than that. It's still quite a substantial feel. I've had a couple of these Stylемasters, and they're quite similar to some of the felt that's used by Lock & Co. But there's quite a it's like got the stiff, really quite good stiffness in it, which I'm not sure how much stiffness they put in there. But yeah, I think you're about right there, Josh. 800 to 1,000 would be about right. I think it's just a nice feel, you know. It's not really luxurious as we would know in terms of some of the brands that we've talked about here, that you've got in America and we've got in the UK. But it certainly is a good quality hat for Australia and what they're used to.
Right. It's functional luxury is how I would describe it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I gotta agree. Again, I just got this hat, so I haven't lived in it. Thanks. Shout out to Chris P. Hey, welcome. You know, this hat is one of those hats that, again, utility, right? The brand is kind of synonymous with utility, and you have to appreciate that they can make the hat be a tool, right? Because that's the ultimate compliment I think you could have for a hat. It's like, this hat is not only beautiful, it can actually be a tool, right? When you have the weather, right? We know that hats, that's what they were used for. They were protection from the elements. And this hat is very true to that notion, in that spirit. So that's one of the, at least one of the appeals, I think, that makes Akubra unique.
I think what would be a good idea is if you get yourself a ranch hat, which they tend to be a sort of fawn color or a brown, and the brims are much wider. I think it's very different to the style that you've been wearing, but as you say, it's quite functional. And you know, typically the rancher would wear the brown hat with a wide brim in the daytime, come back to the city and put on the Stylemaster to go and have dinner with his wife or whatever. You know, it's he'll stick with the brand and because he knows it, and it's you know, it's an Australian-based brand.
Paul, you're great. And Ian says Australia often has a harsh environment. Exactly. You know, there's a deep connection, obviously, between the UK and Australia. You know, I won't get into those details because I'm not as well versed. I do know that there is a connection, and we'll learn about that in a second when I go into the ChatGPT portion. But what Paul hit on is really important in that that the Stylemaster, and again, this is something I believe it came out in the ChatGPT, and we'll get to that in a second. But the Stylemaster is often considered a gateway style for Akubra. So people will find their way into Akubra via the Stylemaster, and then when they get there, they're like, "Holy cow, this brand is awesome!" Then they start getting the other ones, the Cattleman, the Banjo, I believe, is another one. They'll get all the other Akubras because, again, it's because of the Stylemaster. And it might be the other way around. I mean, for me, it's the Stylemaster. For somebody else, they might have started off with a Cattleman, and maybe then brought themselves into the Stylemaster. That's the beautiful part about product, right? Having a product line that serves that dual purpose. I mentioned my Corolla. For many people, a Corolla is their gateway into buying a Camry, into buying a Toyota Avalon, and then ultimately getting into a Lexus, right? And that's why Toyota and that Toyota Lexus brand works so harmoniously. And that's, I think, kind of a masterclass in how to have a brand, regardless of what your industry is, how to have a brand and maybe a product that goes with that brand that is, I don't know if the word is correct word, but parsimonious, right? Parsimonious. You have enough coverage, but not too much coverage, right? We see what happens when there's too many products. Like you have the example out of GM, where GM had Chevrolet, they had GMC, they had Buick, they had Pontiac, they had Saturn. All of a sudden, the brands start cannibalizing each other. And now the customer doesn't even know where, like, if I want luxury, do I go Buick or do I go a Cadillac? You know, they start making those decisions. And what happens, right? It's a violation of the #1 rule of sales. Always be closing. If a customer is having a tough time, it seems like it's a good thing. Oh, they're having a tough time, but when they're having a tough time, they're delaying the decision to buy. The key thing is they're not buying. Always be closing. So if you find that you're paralyzing your customer, this is Luke, the sales guy that has no real sales experience, right? I mean, I think we're technically all, if you're out there providing a service, you're technically in sales, right? Because when I worked with my clients, I may not be selling them, right? They may already be a client, but in order to get new work, I have to give them a good experience, right? So I'm making a potential future sale, or I'm potentially blowing it if I don't go and do this service, provide the service in the right way. Maybe I'm difficult to work with. Maybe they just don't like the fact that I smile at them too much. You know what I mean? But Luke, the brand, as in providing a service, is very similar, and you have to make sure that you don't unnecessarily blow the sale by giving too many products. You know what I mean? So I feel like, I don't know. I feel like there's something that I feel like I'm maybe touching the surface on. Obviously, Paul and other folks that know, they probably forgot more than I will ever know about branding. But there is such a thing about having it. And I feel like the car manufacturers are just one example of what happens when branding goes wrong sometimes. And it's a lesson learned. I mean, I think it's beautiful in that you have those examples for you to learn from without having gone through it, right? You can live vicariously through those brands. Anyhow, I'll get off that soapbox because it's not my expertise. Yeah, so ChatGPT, about the history. Now, this is something I'm going to admit. I did not know that Akubra was as old as I found out. So apparently the brand was founded in 1874 by Benjamin Dunkerley, an English hat maker who emigrated to Australia. So there you go. I mentioned that there was a connection. Even within the company itself, there's a connection. Yeah, it goes to show you, like I said, this is something that is very common in the definitely in the United States as well, right? We are a country of immigrants. So regardless of how you feel about immigration, some of the greatest products that this country has seen has been crafted from the hands of immigrants, right? We talked about Huckel and Peschel. They were German immigrants that settled in Czechoslovakia, which is now the Czech Republic. Hopefully I got that right. And they created these brands that has a link to Germany, right? That has a German history behind it, but is very much ingrained in Czech culture. And I believe the watch brand Bulova, is, I believe, a Czech. It could be either Czech or something, something of that area. So Bulova was an immigrant that came to New York. I believe he settled in Queens and then started his Bulova watch brand. And again, regardless of how you feel about Bulova, it's a recognizable brand. And for some people, that Bulova is like as high as they would go in the watch world. Bulova is no less important than Rolex or Patek Philippe or Omega and all these other brands. Shout out to Bulova because that's a great brand. I actually have two Bulovas in my watch collection. They were both, one of them was a watch that I bought for myself and I gifted to my dad. It's now find its way back into my watch collection because my mom said, your dad's getting up there in age. We don't want you to lose it. So I'm going to give it back to you. And she did that without my dad knowing. My dad doesn't really watch these streams, so I think I'm safe here. But the other Bulova that I own is a watch that my mom purchased for my dad. And the only reason I found out was when my mom handed me the watches, I looked at it and said, I didn't give dad this watch. She said, oh yeah, that watch I gifted to your dad. Because we all know he loved the watches, loves watches, still loves watches. Yeah, that's the story. So I'm glad that I thought to ask my mom because otherwise I would have never known how that, who'd never know, right? My parents they're human beings. They're not going to live forever. Nobody does. But I'm so happy that I asked that question because now I know where the watch came from. And now the watch means a lot more to me. So just another example of provenance. So not to get too long in the tooth here, but I'm just going to read here. Dunkerley invented a machine that mechanized rabbit fur hat cutting, making the felt hat production process more efficient. So Akubra was registered as a trademark in 1912. Wow. Now the word is believed to have indigenous Australian origins, often said to mean head covering, though some scholars dispute the exact source. Interesting. This is something, again, for you guys, your history nerds, you guys probably can go sink your teeth into this, if that's your thing, right? Otherwise, you may I don't care about that, and that's fine. But the history nerd in me, especially hat history, it makes me want to research that further. By the early 20th century, Akubra was already producing quality felt hats for working Australians, stockmen and city wearers alike. Interesting stuff. I mean, let's see here. Joseph Bulova was Czech and formed his company in 1875 in New York. Thank you, Ian, my fellow researcher here, my faithful moderator. That Joseph Bulova. Shout out to Bulova. Great watches, great brand. Big fan of Bulova. It's just one of the things you can see how the Czech Republic is some of the contributions that they've made into the hat world as well as into the watch world, and I'm sure many other contributions that I'm forgetting right now. So shout out to the Czech Republic. Really, really great history. Okay. The hats material made from rabbit fur felt, sometimes mixed with hair, which is durable, water resistant, and soft. Akubra consumes millions of rabbit pelts each year. The fur industry in Australia largely exists because of the rabbit pest problem. Wow. Isn't it interesting that, right? I mentioned this before about in Florida, there's a problem with iguanas, right? Chances are, if you have an invasive species in the United States, it probably started in Florida. Sorry, Florida, but it's the truth. Hopefully nobody begrudges me for that. But you can see the happy accident here, right? For Akubra, they may have a pest problem, a hair pest problem, but now Akubra is now using that to make these hats. So it's like the silver lining in what is otherwise probably a big thorn in the side of government there. Again, when you know what I say, when life hands you lemons, make limoncello. Usually that's not how this goes, but Luke happens to like limoncellos. It's just something in hanging out with older folks, and especially in the family, I've gained a newfound appreciation for the limoncello. I know it's not for everybody, but I'm like, if it works for older people, it works for me. Shout out to limoncellos. So construction, every Akubra is still made in Australia, requiring over 60 individual processes and taking about 6 to 7 weeks to finish. Notable models, the Cattleman, which we mentioned, Australia's best-selling hat, Stockman style with a broad brim. The Stylemaster, which is what I'm wearing right now, a classic fedora / dress hat. Then they have the banjo. I mean, I never knew it as the Banjo Patterson. Usually, I believe Akubra folks will just call it the banjo. But the Banjo Patterson is named after the poet. It's a popular wide-brimmed style. The Snowy River, I mean, if you've gone to the Fedora Lounge, you will see lots of snowy rivers. It's a rugged brim snap hat associated with drovers and horsemen. And then, of course, the slouch hat. Everybody, I think, if you know about anything about Australia, you know about the slouch hat. Akubra manufactures the Australian Army slouch hat with the turned up brim and emu plume. Hopefully I pronounced that right. That is interesting. I did not know that as well. That's, again, you guys probably already knew this, but this is something I learned this for the first time. I knew of this hat. I had no idea that Akubra manufactured this. They were the official manufacturer for the Australian Army. So it goes to show you. What else? Let's see. I won't go too crazy into this, but I do, like, it gets me really riled up when I start reading this stuff because it gets me excited. It says Akubra hats are part of the official Australian military uniform, right? So the slouch hats, worn by prime ministers, farmers, and celebrities alike, including former Prime Minister Bob Katter, is rarely seen without his Akubra. Cultural influence. Everybody that grew up around the same time I did remembers Crocodile Dundee, right? Paul Hogan's iconic Outback hat was an Akubra, custom modified. So Akubra hats, in terms of their marketing, Akubra hats are often used in campaigns to symbolize Australia. Now, who wouldn't like that, right? Who wouldn't want to create a brand that becomes synonymous with the country of origin? I think that's kind of like the ultimate, right? I mean, you can say what you want about Borsellino, but I don't know if even Borsellino or even Lock & Company could say that they're synonymous, right, with the country. That's something is a feather in their cap for Akubra that they are. You know, maybe Stetson and Resistol could do that for the U.S. I don't know, but what it says here, and again, I have no basis to reject that is not accurate, that Akubra hats are used to just symbolize Australia. That's amazing. Josh said, no, yeah, you're not wrong. Interesting. Like I said, always fact check me on anything that you get here, because I already said this comes from ChatGPT. It may not be accurate. We know AI has its limitations. But about the ownership, it's still a family-run company today, passed down to the Keir family, descendants of the Dunkerley's daughter. Interesting. The factory is located in Kempsey, New South Wales. Production scale about 100 to 120,000 hats produced annually. Wow, that's amazing. Stetson does with the U.S. president. The U.S. presidents have worn the open road hat at inaugurations. Interesting. Yeah, that is true. I forgot to mention that. That's great. Thanks for mentioning that, Josh. Yeah, obviously we also know about John Kavanagh. John Kavanagh had won the contest. I don't know if it was a contest, but John Kavanagh won the right to produce John F. Kennedy's hat. So if you look at John F. Kennedy's inauguration, he wore a Kavanagh top hat. You know, and a lot of photos don't show him with the hat on. Obviously, we all know about Kennedy and his proclivity not to wear hats. He did wear it at the inauguration, but in a lot of photos, you will see the hat in the background. You will see the Kavanagh top hat in the background. It's just Kennedy wasn't a guy that liked wearing hats. He was actually the first U.S. president that kind of more or less went hatless. But I've already mentioned that. I won't keep belaboring that point. With care, Akubra can last decades. Many become heirlooms. That's great. And a single Akubra can often take 10 rabbits worth of fur, depending on the size and weight. The felt is waterproof. Many wearers treat it as functional rain gear as much as fashion. And we talked about that. And I think that is kind of its claim to fame. An Akubra is an Akubra because it is not only beautiful, it is also functional luxury, as I mentioned. Each hat can take on a unique patina with age, sweat, and sun, which fans often consider part of the charm. Collectors often steam and rebash Akubras to achieve different crown shapes turning one model into another. That's something that I never noticed before. Maybe I'm just not. Now that's something that you don't need an Akubra to do, right? I've seen that done before, but apparently, according to ChatGPT, it is something that Akubras are particularly known for. In that people will maybe take a I don't know if this is even possible. They'll take a cattleman and make it and turn it into a banjo or you know, a snowy river. I have not seen that. I can't recall that. But again, I don't know what I don't know, right? I might have seen a what I thought was a cattleman, but ends up being a snowy river, and it's probably because the owner thought to do it and never mentioned it. So that's actually kind of neat.
Yeah, I bought an Akubra once, which had been bashed into a different shape. So I wanted to put it back to its original shape from the factory. And when I steamed it, what was very noticeable was that the hat had been used for what it was meant to be used for and worn out in the sun. And of course, the sun had made marks on the folded material at the top where it had folded in. And of course, when I bashed the hat into its original shape, you could see all of the marks from the shape that I'd been into. So it was pointless. I just put it back to the shape that I bought it in and let it go on that. But so that's something to be mindful of, is that felt can get damaged by sun.
Yeah, as long as you're comfortable with that, right? So, you like Paul said that to me, and then I would I got no problem wearing that hat. But again, that's why there's no wrong or right way to do this hobby. Somebody may go and reshape it, and they're like, oh yeah, now it's actually my own hat. You know, you made it your own, right? But again, you kind of have to know what you're dealing with when you go into the used market. These are the type of things that you have to kind of I wouldn't have known that until Paul said that, because I usually don't rebash my hats, right? If they come bashed, I leave it that way, but that's more of a laziness thing. Let's see. Josh said, one thing I've noticed about Akubras is the pull down on the front and back is pretty steep. I'm assuming you meant steep. While U.S. cowboy hats aren't as pulled down. Interesting. That's an interesting observation, Josh. Paul, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's from the natural point of view that they want the hat to actually keep the sun off them, and they've got, you know, as wide brims, you know, 4-inch brims and bigger in some cases. But whereas on a Stetson or cowboy hat, they'll turn up for for style reasons, I guess. You know, they'll be much flatter, and in fact, as Josh pointed out, they'll be down, and back they'd be down, and be down at the back to cover the neck, because of course the neckline, when you're bending over and toiling on the earth or playing around with a tractor or something, your neck's going to be quite exposed unless you have that coverage there. So those are the actual practical reasons for doing it. And you know what? It's a nice thing to have in your collection. There's a hat that does wear a brim well, that goes down at the front and down at the back. It's a very nice curved shape. In fact, you know, you see things like the Indiana Jones hat, and that's a sort of hybrid between the two, because it's got that sort of shape, but then it does come up at the back. That was very clever of Herbert Johnson when they actually designed that, and how they tapered down the sides. So the sides are actually narrower than the front and back in terms of the brim width. But sorry, I digress. But great. But yeah, that's I think the reason why they're flat.
Yeah, and that just reminded me. I just remembered the reason why I never bought that Cygnus from Kevin is that it had a 3-inch brim. So again, the idea is Cygnus probably created that hat to be more functional than aesthetic. I mean, it was a beautiful hat, don't get me wrong, but for me, I just didn't think I could pull off a 3-inch brim. I probably still don't think. I still don't own a 3-inch brim hat. And who's to say I might get one? I might finally spring for one, and who knows, that might become my signature hat. Who knows? Like I said, my hat collection, right? I'm now like pushing 40 hats. I think the last time I spoke, I said 30, but you know, I've acquired some hats. And I'm still acquiring hats. So I'm probably, without doing the count, like you guys already seen that I have my hat wall starting to be erected here. I now have 28 hats hanging up around me. That's the count. So I still have more hats over there that have yet to be hung up. But you know, at some point I'm gonna start losing the steam, and my hat collection will probably stay stagnant. Maybe I'll sell some. You know, that's just how hats work.
Yeah, I mean that's a 3-inch brim, and it's quite a
yeah. See, that doesn't look unmanageable.
it's quite a big brim. You know, when you have to be. I mean, I'm a big lad in terms of the width of my
shoulders count.
Shoulders, yeah, and you know that's really quite a big, you know, big brims hat.
Yeah, Paul, that looks like it's perfect on you. And then maybe with me, I have narrow shoulders, and maybe that's why the stingy brim works so well with me. You know, I don't know. I play with the cards that got dealt with me, right? And you know, I have narrow shoulders, and I'm like, luckily, I found a style that worked for me. But now I'm still experimenting, right? There's no rule that says a narrow-shouldered gentleman can't wear a big brim, especially if it's functional.
No,
right?
It's just and you know, if you're going out in the rain, you want something to cover you, great. You know, it's something.
Yeah.
If you want to make a bit of a statement, but generally, I'd be talking to a client about being very careful about as big a brim, unless they're quite a large gentleman.
Yeah. And then here, Josh says, my cowboy hat I have has a 4.5-inch brim, and when I get into my car, I knock it sometimes. Interesting. Yeah. Now, you know what an observation that I made, right? And again, I have a friend, I had a former coworker who's from Japan. And she would wear these very, very big hats. And I always asked her, I was like, what, you know, I noticed that before. Could you explain why? And then she went on to explain. Again, I have no reason to doubt that what she said is accurate, because I'm not as familiar with Japanese culture. But she said that the women in Japan value fairer skin, right? So one of the ultimate goals for women in Japan, according to my friend, my former coworker, is to have porcelain-like skin. So the sun is your enemy. So hats that have really, really wide brims in Japan are especially popular for females because of that aesthetic and that desire to maintain that porcelain skin. I thought that was fascinating. Really fascinating. Granted, it had 250-gram weight. Wow. Again, not knowing as much as like Paul does about the different weights, that sounds really heavyweight.
That's top end. I mean, that is, you know, there aren't many that are much heavier than that, and with a 250-gram beaver felt is quite rare. But I mean, a 250-gram rabbit felt is a fantastic weight and a really substantial hat.
Yeah. And then Ian adds, that reminds me of the hat in The Shadow wore in the film. Yeah, classic film, The Shadow. The Shadow knows. Oh man, Ian, I love the shout out to Ian for being such a great movie buff and a book you know, aficionado. That's something that I'm still getting. I got to get a little bit more into books, you know. Shout out to my book readers out there. You get some real jewels if you're a fan film buff. Obviously, me and Ian are both that. Ian's also a little bit more eclectic. Besides also being a musician, he's got really great recommendations. He has not led me astray yet. So shout out to Ian. So yeah, I'll continue on with the next thing here. It says, this is about the Stylemaster in particular.
Sorry, Luke, just to interject, but I've just noticed the time, and I'm late for another appointment.
Oh yeah, so Paul, thank you.
Well, I'm enjoying it so much that I wasn't looking at the clock. But
you can catch us in syndication. You can catch the rest of it in syndication.
With pleasure. But thank you for having me on today, and I look forward to catching up very soon. And goodbye to everybody that's joined us. Thanks very much, and making it a really good session.
Oh, my pleasure, Paul. Thank you so much. Hey, we'll be in touch. And I love the hat. All right. Well, yeah. Let's see here. Let me make sure that I have listened to the radio series and read the books. Yeah. See, I mean, and I'm sure the books are probably better than the film. That's usually how that works. You know, I mean, it's just a truism. You know, same with the Godfather series. Everybody says, well, the book, you know, the film really leaves a lot of details out of the book. But you know, that's why these things are available. Jock says, fun fact about Korea, it had an unofficial nickname. It was called the Land of Hats. Hats signified status. The more elaborate, the higher the status. Wow, that's amazing. And I think that's shout out to Paul. Thank you, Paul. You again, you never have to like say sorry for having to take off. Paul's a busy man. We're happy to have, like, Paul's been on here just under 2 hours. I mean, I can't ask for anything else, from somebody as busy as Paul is. Paul, thank you. I appreciate it. And again, hopefully you can catch the rest in syndication. We won't be here too much longer. But what Josh just pointed out is something that I find is a lot more pervasive, right? We talked about the women of Bolivia, right? The women of Bolivia, the indigenous women of Bolivia, they have the hat subculture, right, that exists with these indigenous women. And the way I understand it, and anybody that from Bolivia can correct me, or somebody that just knows more than me, I'm not opposed to being corrected. But my understanding is the hat women of Peru, as they are sometimes affectionately called, at least I'm hoping it's affectionately called. Hopefully that's not offensive. But the hat women of Peru, the story goes that when the Europeans arrived, they came in their fine felt hats. And it was not something, I made this mention of this, it was not something that the locals could afford, right? And obviously there was some sort of class elitism that was happening there. And what happened was, it wasn't so much the men, but the women got together and started making these hats as kind of like an up yours to the Europeans that were wearing these hats and kind of like flaunting it in their face. I mean, regardless of how you feel about that, revenge, right? I think that's a very, very acceptable kind of revenge, But yeah, Ian says there's a shop in London that sells those Bolivian hats. Yeah, they're quite beautiful. Usually they'll have like a rope. The way I have seen them in my recollection is usually they have a lot more of rope type ribbon or band. And usually the rope will have like pieces of wood, like really nicely carved wood at the ends. Very similar to like the Western style Kavanaugh that I've shown you on a past stream, or at least I think I've shown you. Either I've shown it on the video or I've profiled it in a Facebook post or a Fedora Lounge post. But it has kind of a little bit more of a Western aesthetic, very beautiful. And the nice thing is that they're kind of like, they very much are open crown, right? They're kind of like a bowler shape. I have no idea about how hard they are, but they look like they are the bowler style hard hats. So one, they could be functional, right? We know that bowler hats and the derby or the derby, as it's referred to in the UK, those hats were also functional, right? When you would be a horse, when you were riding horse, and you wanted to add a little protection to your head, a bowler hat or a derby/derby hat would be a little bit of protection, right? If before they had helmets, you would wear one of those. And I'm sure that without knowing it, I feel like that bowler style hat, as long as it was hard, kind of like those bowlers and derbies, I'm sure that may have been some of the rationale for them going with that style, but I don't know that. I'm basically speculating at this point. But shout out to the Bolivian hat women of Peru. Sorry, not Peru. I keep doing that. Sorry, Peru. Sorry, Bolivia. The indigenous hat women of Bolivia. I might have said Peru. If I said Peru, sorry about that. My brain. Sometimes my mouth speaks faster than my brain. Sometimes I have Peru on the mind because there's so much great food in Peru. If you have the opportunity to sample Peruvian food, do it. You will not regret it, especially if you enjoy seafood. If you don't enjoy seafood, you can still enjoy a Peruvian meal, but they're very known for their seafood. Shout out to Peru. Shout out to Bolivia. So basically, the Stylemaster is Akubra's take on the classic 20th century fedora designed as a dress hat rather than a working stockman's hat. Ian adds, derby is also called a billycock hat. Yeah, Ian, I believe you mentioned that before. I'm trying to incorporate that into that way I can always refer to it by the various names. Shout out to the bowler/derby/darby/billycock hat. And I'm sure there's one other one that I'm not capturing now, but it's like on the tip of my tongue. But you guys probably already know it. Feel free to shout it if you do know it. But there are many names, right? And I mean, obviously, some of this is as opposed to it's regional, depending on your location. Obviously, we know about the derby/darby distinction. you know, by the UK, you know, folks in the UK versus folks here in the US. Shout out to the bowler hat. What a great hat. If you love the bowler hat, then they're, you know, like I do, then it's just a hat that commands like as much respect, I think, in my mind, as a top hat, as much respect as a Hamburg. Shout out to the bowler and that whole style and family style of hats. Obviously, you know, a lot of very much like the Akubra is rooted in function just as much as it is style. Okay, so basically, the Stylemaster was first introduced in the mid-20th century. It was a Akubra city hat for more formal or business wear. And here it goes into some of the characteristics of the Stylemaster. Josh says, I have plans to make a bowler hat. Good on you, Josh. Good on you for opening yourself up to making a bowler hat. You know, I'm going to tell you, Josh, one thing that is, and Ian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I know from my experience, one of the things, if you're a vintage hat nerd and you are searching for a bowler hat, there's usually a premium to be paid when you have a brown bowler. Just for some reason, I don't know the answer to it. There weren't that many vintage brown bowlers out there. They exist, but they're a lot more rare than the classic black bowler. So, Josh, if you have an idea about color, obviously we know that colors in modern hats, other colors exist. Sometimes to the point where like a green bowler is kind of like it's kind of poo-pooed by a lot of hat nerds because they just consider it like a, you know, kind of a leprechaun hat, you know, and it's synonymous with St. Patrick's Day. No offense to anybody that might like those costume hats. It's just not something that I consider a fine hat. If you wear a costume hat, not that you can't use. Like for me, I every Halloween I dress up as one of the Blues Brothers, right? But I wear an actual fedora. I don't buy like a costume fedora. No offense if that's what you like. A Coke hat, that's it. Coke hat. Thank you, Ian. You mentioned that before, and I it was on the tip of my tongue, but thank you for mentioning it. Coke hat, a plug hat, bombin in Spain, and a melone in Germany. Ian, you are amazing. You know, shout out to Ian for continuing to be amazing. Again, Ian never comes on camera on here, and that's okay. But Ian still participates, and now Ian and Josh are really really active participants. Also, Morgan. Morgan's busy with school. Shout out to Morgan. She popped her head in. She's probably on her way to a class or coming back from a class today, or studying for a class. You know, she's 19 and you know, starting to get her education and moving on and, you know, doing bigger and better things so that she can get more money to buy more hats, right? Morgan already has an impressive hat collection at 19. Morgan is spoiled by Huff Bud. You know, she already mentioned that she sold a lot of her other hats because she's spoiled on Huff Bud. Hey, shout out to Morgan for having Huff Buds at 19. I really wish, you know, one, I had the means and also the, you know, proclivity, you know, to have something like a Huff Bud. You know, a Huff Bud might not have been existed, but just fine hats in general, right? I wasn't wearing any hats when I was 19. And if I was, it was a baseball cap. So no shout out, you know, nothing wrong with the baseball cap, nothing wrong with the trucker hat. It's just not my thing, not anymore. So if you guys, you know, my son wears them, it's okay. Ian says, yes, I miss Morgan, same thing, but education is important for a young person. Yes, exactly. There's that old adage. If you think education is expensive, you should try ignorance. I think that's a really telling old adage. It's one that I subscribe to. And you don't need to pay for an education, right? You can read a book. You can go and if you need access to books, get a library card. You can often get them for free or a couple bucks, and you can have all the access to free education that you want, right? And again, it's not limited to books as well. You can get educated with movies, right? There's certain movies that you can use to get your education. They're documentaries, however it is, but education is way better than ignorance, right? Lots of ignorance out there, you know, and again, I don't mean that as a, you know, calling people ignorant, but we know that, you know, we've interacted, we've been here, we've been alive enough time. Even if you're Morgan's age, you've already been alive enough to know that there's a lot of ignorance out there. And, you know, I just, it's just too much, right? So true. Josh says, so true. I learned how to make hats from videos and research. Yeah. A lot of people poo-poo YouTube. But again, you know, obviously, you know, I love YouTube because I happen to like decided to become a YouTuber. But there's a lot of good content on YouTube, you know. I like to use the term benevolent nerds, right? And I consider myself one, or at least a junior benevolent nerd. I am somebody that has like a passion. Paul is the same way. Kevin's the same. And all the other folks that are on YouTube, a lot of us are benevolent nerds that are really into certain subjects, and all to the point where we now want to create content and share our knowledge about those subjects. I have not apprentices with anyone. Yeah. But again, Josh, that doesn't mean that you won't, right? And you never know. Like I said, Paul considers himself a very young in the hatting world, right? In the hat making world, but he already has, like, if he doesn't refer to them as apprentices, like he's mentoring young hatters. I think that's Paul's exact words, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, Paul probably learns just as much from that process than he's teaching, and that's the beauty about being a mentor. So Josh, don't worry about the apprentice stuff. I mean, again, unless you don't want to, unless you rather like not have an apprentice, so that you can like be a little bit more solitary with your craft. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, apprenticeship is not for everybody. And being somebody that has an apprentice is not for everybody. If you happen to love the idea of learning via teaching, because I think it's a powerful mechanism for learning, then, you know, you go with it. Otherwise, you know, I mean, the nice thing is you got somebody like Paul that's doing mentorship. Mikhail from Huffbud has provided mentorship, as well as Hornskov. They provided mentorship through to Paul, and Paul is really grateful for it. It's beautiful. Ian says that is an advantage of our modern world, Joshua. Yes, I agree, 100%, Ian, 100%. Like I said, just because we may have little little qualms with technology, it doesn't mean we can't use it to further and better our lives. That's the whole point of having technology, in my opinion. Josh says, I'm always willing to learn and teach. I hope to one day teach this craft. Also, it needs to survive. Completely agree. Right? You know, right? So Josh is based in Alabama, I believe, Josh. Josh might, like, you never know. Again, I've only been to Alabama once. I've been to Birmingham. Beautiful city, actually. Shout out to Birmingham, Alabama. Small city, but beautiful. I really had a great time in Birmingham. But yeah, Alabama, you never know. Like I said, I don't know what the hatting community is like in Alabama, but you never know. You might, if it's anything like the rest of the U.S., you probably don't have a lot of hatters, in your neck of the woods, Josh, and you could be the one that provides and passes on to somebody local. And they might not go to somebody like Paul via the web, right? They might say, oh no, I want to learn from Josh because he's in my neck of the woods. That's how it works. Yeah, Ian says teaching is a great way of learning. I completely agree. I taught one class at the college level, and I learned so much from teaching that class. It's something I want to get back into. I just happen to be that far off from a couple universities. I do want to get back into teaching because the conference that I attended yesterday just reminded me of how much I miss teaching, as well as learning, like a little bit more formal in a formal environment, right? I'm always learning, right? I never stop learning, because once you stop learning, I mean, all's lost. Like I don't want to know about a life that involves me stopping from learning. And Josh says, if you are in Huntsville, all hit me up. Shout out to Huntsville, another great town in Alabama. I have not been, but I've heard so many great things about Huntsville. Shout out to Huntsville, shout out to Birmingham. And if you're in the Huntsville area and you want to chop it up with Josh, he's already given you the open invite. So shout out to my folks in Alabama. What was I? About the Stylemaster. I don't know if I need to like go into all this. This is something that you can look up, but it's a medium weight felt, suitable for making both everyday city wear and occasional dress use. That's interesting. It's kind of like a, it's kind of that medium weight. And this is something that I've learned from Paul and as well as Josh about appreciating the different weights of felts. It's something that I've known intuitively from pinching, doing like the pinch test, I like to call it. But now with you guys, I'm learning a lot more. So it says here, the brim typically 2.5 inches with a bound edge for a crisp finish. A slight snap brim can be worn up or down and tends to look best snapped down at the front. And I happen to agree with that because when I tried it, it came to me with the brim snapped up. I put it on and I said, nope, even though you guys already know that's my style, but with this 2.5 inch brim, the brim down is definitely no doubt. The Grosgrain ribbon is usually about 1.5 inches wide with a bow and a Akubra pin on the side. I have no idea if mine has a pin. You never know. Who knows? Maybe they have a pin model, or maybe it got lost by the previous owner. But what else? I mentioned this before. It has the reputation of being a gateway hat, right? For those folks new to felt hats, because it's versatile enough for both casual and formal wear. Modeled on the golden age Hollywood look. Think 1940s and 1950s film stars where the fedora was a staple. Sometimes the Stylemaster is referred to as the Akubra Bogart in enthusiast circles, although not an official name, because of its similarity to the hats worn by Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. Shout out to Casablanca. Shout out to Humphrey Bogart. Wow, in terms of like icons, right? We're definitely going to do Casablanca in a future Fedora Friday. Even though it hasn't been one of the options, I'm going to add that because Casablanca is like required, right? Like everybody knows, even if you don't know anything about hats, you know about Casablanca. And you kind of know the look, right? It's iconic. Shout out to that movie. That's a great movie. It works equally well with a suit, a sport coat, and smart casual, making it more city-friendly than Akubra's wide country brims. And then I'll add the last, this is the last piece of info here. Its shapeability, while pre-creased, the felt is pliable enough for rebashing if the wearer wants to change the crown style. Though dressier, it's still tougher than many European dress hats because Akubra's felts are dense and water resistant. The sizing, it runs on the firm side. Many wearers suggest sizing up if you're between sizes. It's funny because I didn't have that experience. I have a 57. Remember, I fashion myself somewhere between 57 and 58. However, if I had to measure it myself, I'd probably actually be closer to 57 than 58. I happen to prefer having a little bit more wiggle room. But this was definitely firm on the head, but not overly so. So if that is any consolation, I have no idea if I just got one that is not smaller. So FYI, patina. Over time, sweat and handling give the Stylemaster a personal character, which some collectors value just as much as the original finish. So if that's not a nod to where your Stylemaster, I don't know what is, or your Akubra in general. Place in the Akubra line, the Stylemaster sits alongside models like the Fedora and the Sydney as Akubra's dress hat offerings. It is often compared to Fedora model, and the Fedora has a slightly wider brim, about 2 3/4 inches, while the Stylemaster is a little bit more restrained at 2.5 inches, giving it a trimmer, city-suited profile. And there you go. Easier to size down than up. Exactly. It's kind of like that old adage, better to have and not need than to need and not have, right? Right? We all kind of know that stretching a hat is possible, but sometimes it's not possible without altering the shape, I think irreparably, right? So this is something that I think Kevin Gerber and his channel, he's mentioned, be careful about how far you stretch a hat. And sometimes you want to make sure that you don't go too far, right? Because the further you go and the more sizes you try to jump up when you do the hat stretching, well, the more likely you are to alter the shape of the brim and other proportions that could pretty much ruin the hat. So, I mean, I'm sure Josh could probably opine a whole lot more on that, and as well as Paul. But I'll just speak of that because, again, I want this channel to be a channel where you guys learn, even if you are not, right? That we have a lot of folks that have a lot of knowledge, but I also want this channel to be something where somebody that's a novice to hat wearing can come here and learn a little bit something and not like, not be against, like, essentially talked down to by our hat nerds. And the nice thing is that we don't have that culture here. We're very small here. This channel is not even at 50 subscribers. Although we are climbing, right? I think we're at 45 or 46, something like that. So we are climbing. So what I will tell you guys is, hit that like and subscribe button, right? Kind of do that if you want to support the channel. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. The nice thing is, and I mentioned this before, is that once we get to 100 subscribers, we are going to get to the point where we do the giveaway, right? I mentioned this before. I'm going to keep mentioning just in case we have somebody that this hat is a Knox custom. It actually happens to be a Knox custom that was built in Canada under license. I saw this as a very alpine looking hat. Again, not anything like super special. You're not gonna, I'm not giving away a Huff Buddy here or one of Paul's beauties. But this might be a very good starter hat for somebody that either yourself or somebody It's a 7 1/4. And if you are interested, the only thing you need to do is, one, be a subscriber, right? Be a subscriber. And at some point, once I drop the video, like once I get to 100 subscribers, I will drop a video on that hat. I don't know if I'll wear it because I don't even remember the last time I wore that hat. I might not wear it, but I will profile it in maybe a future hat chat or a Hat Tuesday. And what I'll do is I'll ask you guys to drop a comment in that video. And I'll probably I'll have to have some parameters in there. I haven't thought through, but I will confer with my my board, and you'll have a chance to win it. And if you don't want it, if you end up winning it and you don't want it, maybe I'll just ask you to pick somebody that you want it to go to. Right? Maybe that'll be the format. I'll figure something out, and we'll work on shipping. Right? Obviously, if you're international, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. I may have you cover the shipping. But we'll figure it out, right? And somebody will go from hopefully being hatless to having a fine hat, or they will just add this to their collection, and that's fine. Ian says, I've learned a lot, and I've been wearing hats for yonks. Yeah. Again, there's no reason, like you don't need a reason to wear a hat. And if somebody asks you for a reason, to demand a reason, hey, why are you wearing a hat for? I'm like, hey. Maybe it's your reason to go New York on them. You're like, hey, what's it to you? Yeah. Or maybe you don't do that. Maybe you just need to, like, I don't know. I've been asked, I've been asked by kids, why do you smile so much? And I go and I'll explain why I smile. I love to smile because, I'm like, smiling makes me feel happy. Right. So if it's actually shown in the research that if you crack a smile, it releases those happy neurotransmitters in your brain. And now, even if you weren't happy, you have a better chance of becoming happy, right? It's like that's fake it till you make it, right? So just a little tip out there for you. If you don't show your smile, maybe because you're ashamed of your teeth, right? I've actually had that happen to myself, right? Growing up, I didn't have great teeth. I got them straightened out. Not everybody can afford to do that, but if you can, if it'll help you smile more, it might be worth the investment, right? As long as you're not going hungry, right? If you have the coin to do it, it's a great investment. I think anybody that loves to smile as much as I do, they will tell you, I mean, that's probably about one of the best investments they'll make. And I did the same investment for my son. Luckily, I had the ability to do that. But again, everybody's situation is different. Smile, look up, raises endorphins. Exactly, Ian. That's a smart man, that Ian. And it's not just because he parrots everything, that I happen to agree with, right? I just think that he is, obviously, as Ian, in Ian's own terms, he's no spring chicken, but that's okay. I think Ian is young at heart. And I've seen photos. Ian is well preserved. Let me tell you that. He's a very youthful. I'm not even going to mention his number, but he's very youthful. And I think I got to think that his approach to life and approach to learning is probably a big part of that. So if you want to look younger, do what Ian does. You're gonna pull it off. It's gonna help. It can't hurt you. I tell you that much. I feel younger just listening to Ian talk. So because he makes me have fun. What Ian does is he allows me to have fun here, and all you guys do. Josh, Paul, Morgan, and all the other folks that come on here and interact with me. I have a lot of fun doing it, and I thank you because I know you guys could be anywhere else and doing any number of things, and I appreciate it. 50 years of jiu-jitsu. Wow. Holy cow. I happen to love jiu-jitsu, the art. Not that I practice, but there's Ian, do you do Brazilian style or Japanese jiu-jitsu? Now I'm curious. Ian just became that much more cooler just now. Jiu-jitsu, I think any kind of martial art, any kind of physical activity is good. But there's something about jiu-jitsu, regardless of whether you do Brazilian or Japanese jiu-jitsu, they are kind of just, I think there's just like a lot with hat brands and things like that. Doesn't matter what kind of martial art you do. There's a certain discipline and certain beautiful part of doing, Japanese with some Brazilian. Good. Shout out to all the great Japanese jiu-jitsu masters. I believe the story goes that the Japanese traveled to Brazil, and with them came their jiu-jitsu. And the Brazilians, obviously the Gracie, everybody knows about the Gracie brothers. And even if you don't know, it's easy to look up. The Gracie brothers, Elio, I believe I'm saying that correct. Elio Gracie was somebody that was a very frail man and happened to modify some of the techniques that he learned from, I forgot the gentleman's name, the Japanese. Ian, you might know him, the gentleman that taught Elio. And Elio basically used his leverage, his body, to make some of those techniques, those Japanese jiu-jitsu techniques work for him. It was basically just his expression of jiu-jitsu. It wasn't like anything about, oh, this is Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's something different. It's just jiu-jitsu, right? But because the person doing that jiu-jitsu happened to be Brazilian, and he also happened to be a frailer frame, a smaller man, he had to modify some of the techniques, and that became Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And English bare knuckle, yes. Shout out to my bare knuckle fighters, my UFC fighters, my MMA fighters, my boxers out there. Any kind of combat sport, regardless of whether you are like you compete as fighting or you compete in competition, a jiu-jitsu competition. There's nothing wrong with competition, right? There's a lot of sportsmanship in competition. If you do it the right way, I think, in my mind, the right way is come at it from a learning perspective and be humble, and also take your body to levels that you didn't think that were possible before. There's something very beautiful about that ascendance. And I feel like the martial arts, again, even though I did not study any martial art, I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee, and he talks about personal expression. Beautiful philosopher, Bruce Lee. Ian says, learned from his older brother, Gracie, who learned from Mitsuyu Maeda. Okay, hopefully I pronounced that correct. That's right, Maeda. I remember the last name when you mentioned it, but I did not get the first name. I'm glad I didn't attempt it. But I don't need to, because I have my faithful moderator, Ian, that is able to get and provide the facts. That way I don't misspeak. But yeah, beautiful. It's interesting because I mentioned this on a previous stream. The term origato in Japan somehow is connected to Portuguese, right? The Portuguese will say, and those in Brazil, those that speak Portuguese, will say obrigado, right? And that has some sort of connection to the Japanese of arigato. Again, I don't know any more than that. And those folks that I happen to love language, I'm not really good at other than like English and Spanish. Maybe a little bit of Polish and a little bit of Italian, and sometimes a little French, but just very little, not enough to like be even dangerous, or maybe enough to be dangerous. I don't know. I hope I never get in trouble with language, but You know, it's just sometimes, like I said, the word, right? The power of words are important to know, right? Like the pen is mightier than the sword. I mentioned that before. Anybody that's ever had to deal with lawyers knows that the pen is mightier than the sword sometimes. So yeah, shout out to my lawyers out there. You know, I happen to have some in my family. Regardless of how you feel about lawyers, you know, and a lot of people are, you know, don't have a high opinion of them, but it is an in-demand trade, and they get paid very handsomely for doing what they do. Like I said, you don't buy or try to do any kind. You don't like that old adage. You know, he who has himself as his lawyer has a fool for representation. Something like I butchered that saying, but you know the saying, right? You know, you don't want to represent yourself is the explanation. So shout out to my lawyers, shout out to my doctors. Obviously, very high esteemed professions. There are a lot of other professions that are also not as esteemed, but not any less important, right? We talked about the trades, plumbers, electricians, obviously hatters. You guys, we here celebrate you, cobblers. There's so many professions that don't have the same prestige as doctors and lawyers, but they're no less important. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, you know. Anyway, that has been. I think this is a good time to kind of wrap this up. You know, shout out to all my folks that came out here and interacted with me. Shout out to Paul, first of all, for joining me on screen. Paul, always great to have you. Hopefully you catch the rest of this in syndication. Please support Paul in his channel. Paul runs Fashion for Hats. Ian says, no shame in any job. Yes, if done well, right. If you watch a movie called A Bronx Tale, and you find that the main character, which is Calogero or C, his dad, this is all based on a true story of Chaz Palminteri's life. C's dad is a bus driver, and he's trying to get his son to get away from Sonny the gangster, right? The local gangster who takes a shine to C, Calogero. And there was one scene, yeah, great film, agreed. I recommend it if you haven't watched it. Actually, even if you have watched it, rewatch that movie. But there's a well-known line there that where Calogero confronts his dad because his dad won't stop nagging him about staying away from Sonny, and he tells his dad, "The working man's a sucker." And then his dad, I'm probably going to butcher this, but his dad, played by Robert De Niro, Lorenzo says, no, I'm the hero, right? The working man is a hero. Like, I get up every morning and put on a uniform and go out there and put food on the table. I'm way more of a hero than Sonny. The working man, that's the true hero. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, you know. There's no, just because a work may be you know, based on facts, and maybe not everything in the work is true. It just happens to be there's a lot of details in the Bronx Tale that Chaz Palminteri, shout out to Chaz. Chaz is a YouTuber. If you want to see Chaz now, there are two ways. One, you can go three ways. You can watch his films. You can also watch his YouTube channel. Shout out to Chaz Palminteri's YouTube channel. He's very good friends with Michael Francesi, former Colombo captain. You know, and they collaborate often. And then Chaz also continues to do the one-man show, A Bronx Tale, a one-man show. That's how he started. He was discovered. His one-man show was discovered by Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro was so impressed by the one-man show where essentially Chaz Palminteri acted out the whole entire movie, essentially what you're seeing in Bronx Tale, but he did it as a one-man. He played Sonny, he played C, he played everybody. I've never seen the show, but I do want to catch it. I just haven't had the opportunity. Hopefully I'll catch that soon, and I'll let you guys know about it. But shout out to Chaz, shout out to Robert De Niro, shout out to Lilo Brancato, who played C. We know he went through some personal struggles. He appeared on Sopranos. You know, little factoid about that actor, about Lilo Brancato. Besides going to jail, you know, he had a drug problem. That's actually been covered on Michael's channel. You know, he had a falling out because of that. He had a falling out with Chaz Palminteri. They actually I still think they don't speak to each other. But you know, essentially, Chaz chose to oust him from his life when he got into drugs. You know, I can't begrudge the man. But Lilo is actually He was an orphan. He is actually of Colombian descent. He is not Italian, but he considers himself. He identifies as Italian because he was raised by Italians, I believe in Yonkers. So shout out to Lilo, shout out to Chad, shout out to Robert Niro, and the whole cast of Bronx Tale. Great movie. I recommend it. And so yeah, basically, I'm gonna close this out. And thank you to besides to Paul, thank you to Ian, thank you to Josh, thank you to Morgan for popping in. Thank you to Chris P for popping in and saying hi. This has been Luke with Hat Chat. Well, sorry, not Hat Chat. Hat Tuesday #3, Wednesday edition. Thank you for hanging with me. I had to go to that professional conference. I had a great time, but I did miss you guys. Despite that, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this Wednesday edition of Hat Tuesday #3. FYI, next week in Hat Tuesday #4, I will be bringing back Steve Heck, who joined us as a participant in the chat section. Steve Heck will come on at the next Hat Tuesday #4, and he will discuss right. And hopefully you guys can join me as Steve Heck goes through some of his content, because he is very much an expert in all things German and Austrian hats, especially as relates to the hat making process. I know I'm excited to do that. I also gonna have at some point, I already got confirmation that I'm gonna have the Hatted Professor, the Brad Bowers. So if you know the Hatted Professor, if you don't know, look up his website, look up his content on YouTube. I don't think he has a YouTube channel. I could be wrong about that, but he does appear as a content expert on at least one YouTube video that I'm aware of. Really great. That guy has forgotten more than I will ever know about hat history. So I'm excited to have him on here. We're still working out when he's going to come on, but I will keep you guys tuned in. So again, this has been Luke and Paul and Ian and Josh and Chris with Hat Tuesday #3, Wednesday edition. And like I said, you can subscribe to my channel. You can subscribe to Paul's channel. Please like our videos. Please support us if you can. And even if you don't do that because you're like, you know what, Luke, no, I don't want to do that. But at least do me one other favor. Do me one other slight favor. Stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao.